right. I think we're live. Let me know in the chat. If you're in the chat, let me know how it sounds. Can you hear the audio, voice, and music? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. Check in and hear how that sounds. All right. Voice is a bit loud. All right. I can fix that. Interesting. Okay. Let's hear how this goes. How's that sounding? Should be the connection I was missing. How's that sounding? Can you hear the music now? Alright, let me know how this is sounding. Clipping like crazy. There we go. How's that sounding? But very loud. Hopefully it's better now. I think we've got the clipping issue solved. We can boost the output just a little without clipping there. Should be all right there. How's that sound? Let me know in the chat what this is sounding like. If you've got voice, if you've got audio from the gear. All right, keep me posted in the chat if this needs to go any louder or quieter or whatever. Seems to be good on this end now that I got my stuff sorted. Let a few people join in here, and then we can jump in. There. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Saturday afternoon chat, live stream, make some music, do some of the fun stuff. See if I can change views here. There we go. Guess we can chat a little bit on this one. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. If you guys just if you did anything fun, let me know in the chat. So today's going to be a little different. We're going to build some different types of tracks from scratch. We're just going to build up some beats. We're going to start fresh each time, so you can get a chance to see a little bit the process that I go through when I'm kind of building something improvised. And then those are the things that I would kind of continue on and continue to build as I go through a performance. But I want to just kind of build some of those up from scratch so you can get an idea of what that process looks like. And since it's the first stream of 2025, and we just had our amazing New Year's, hopefully you all had an amazing New Year. I wanted to just chat a little bit about all kinds of stuff, what we're doing with the channel for this year, courses, new courses available now, other ones signing up right now. Just finished up a course, which was amazing, had some great people, had a brand new course that was the first time through, so that was tons of fun. What I'm doing with gear, I'm going to be switching some stuff out pretty quick here, so I'm interested to chat with you guys about that. And anything else, I don't know, you want to talk about, I don't know, electronic music at the Sphere in Las Vegas or whatever. We can chat about whatever you'd like to today, but we're going to do a little music and a little chat. And so if you have any questions about anything, whether it's music, me, the channel, my courses, you know, the music world in general, new gear coming out, shows, anything like that, go ahead and post it in the chat, and I will try to keep up with that and answer as many questions as I can as we go through the stream today. So just a chance to chat with everybody. That's kind of what we're looking for. So also let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. That's always super fun for me. Let's see here. Who do we have? Outer Arm, hi from Mannheim, Germany. Hello, hello, welcome. Polyrhythm, hey, what's going on? Happy New Year to you too. Yes, hope you are well as well. Hope you guys all had a great New Year. I had fun. Some of you may have seen. I ended up spending New Year's here, right where I am today. I did a live stream where I live streamed all of the New Year's across North America. So I started in New York and went on for 3 hours and finished up in California. So yeah, I got to do a bunch of different New Year's. That was really fun too, because it was all improvised for about 3 hours. And then the last hour, when I did the New Year's here, I did kind of a ceremonial thing where at New Year's here, I blanked everything out and I started from scratch because I like that idea of new beginnings. I'm pretty big on starting everything from scratch, every performance, everything that I do, kind of starting from scratch. And I like the Zen garden aspect of that, where you kind of wipe it all clean and begin again. And so everything is new and fresh and exciting and interesting. So yeah, so that's how I do things. So anyway, we can, while we get some questions in here, I'm going to delete everything because that's just the way I like to do stuff. So I like to start from blank sequencers all the time. This is how I start a live performance. I'll go in, do my sound check with whatever gear I had or whatever kind of patterns I had from the last time I played prior to the show. And then I will use that for the sound check, adjust some things so I can hear what I want to hear. And then as soon as sound check's done, I do this. I blank everything out because I like to come up and start from scratch. Oop, I didn't blank this one out. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, start from scratch with everything and have everything kind of set up in a way that I know where it is so I can reach for it, so I can play it. It's kind of like, for me, the setup of the gear, where things are, you know, the sounds that each thing makes is kind of like the tuning of guitar strings for me. So like you've got your guitar tuned, but you don't have anything pre-recorded when you get up there to play. So everything's here, it's ready, it's where it needs to be. And then I can just jump right into it. So let's get started. Well, let's do something a little different today because what the heck? I'm normally in that kind of 140-ish range, but let's take this way down and do something a little bit groovier. So I'm going to go down to 100 BPM. Totally out of character for me, I know. Let me change up the view so you guys can see what's going on. There we go. So you can see what's going on. Yeah, so let's get started at like 100 BPM. Make sure everything's off there. So yeah, so again, you see, once we hit start, everything's going, but there's no sound because obviously there's no sequences. All this stuff is, it's blank, so it's not going to make any sound when you put these up. Drums, I do have some preset things that I like to keep in there that are just kind of the basics. So 16th hi-hat, open hat, ride. Those things, I like to have those in place. Toms as well. And then a couple percussive things. I'll enter these in there. And then this is usually a clap or a snare on this one. But that's kind of pretty much what I leave. Everything else is just kind of random sounds. Some things in here have sequences on them, which, yeah, again, that's not necessarily the plan. But we can just leave those in there and see what they do. So anyway, these are all just kind of sounds. Right, so each one of those is just kind of a sound waiting to be used. The Oxy one is sequencing on this page everything that's in my modular. If we go to sequencer number 2, this is tracks 1 through 8 in the Digatone 2. If we go to sequencer 3, this is 9 through 16 in the Digatone 2. And 4, I don't have it doing anything right now. So save that for later. Maybe we make it do something else. But the idea is to have these things all kind of set and ready. Then the black box has some background stuff. So like some subs, some atmospheres, just things like this that you can kind of layer in with things. A couple of percussion loops, stuff that I've recorded from the modular. And then I have some vocals in here too. I think that I left in here from New Year's. Do I still have those? Maybe, or maybe not. Yeah, so I guess I don't still have this. So anyway, that's where everything is. And then, yeah, so we start to jump in. What I like to do if I'm doing something that's a little out of the norm, so like going down to 100 BPM for me is a little out of the norm. I like to go in and kind of start off with sound, like a lead, a hook, a bass, something like that. So I am going to, I think 14 was a pretty cool sound I had before. So filter this way down and then just kind of randomly put something in here. Oh, this is not the sequencer I want it to be on. Let's go to this one. There we go. So again, that's all on one note just because the way that this is set up. So this is, and it's actually set up right now. Let me set this so that this is going to be an E. And that way I can go. And this sound has a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay on it, obviously. And those are things you can go in and adjust. Just a little. So sometimes I like to start again with something that's like a little bit melodic, a little bit background. Filter this down so we're not getting like too much direction, if that makes sense. Like I don't want one sound to kind of pull in any particular direction at the beginning. I like to kind of bring in a few kind of random things. So we can go into, if we go into one of these tracks, this is a percussive track, so I can go ahead and just kind of add in a few random percussion hits here. And then let's see what this sounds like, and then see what we want to do to adjust that. And again, these are all kind of on one note, so you can then go in and obviously parameter lock the notes. And this is where it gets fun, because then you can just start to kind of dial in sounds. And you can get kind of cool things that are happening in the background there. Let's go to, I think this was kind of a snap sound if I'm not wrong. Go in and set some probability to those, so they don't always happen. Do the same over here. I'd like a slight delay, so that way you get a little bit of something interesting happening, so you can kind of start to hear things kind of moving around. Then I have those atmospheres in the black box. This is kind of when I would normally layer in something just to have as kind of a background foundational thing. All of this is either low or high, so something in kind of the high mids. So if I bring in, so if I bring the sound all the way up, you can hear what it is. It's actually a sound from a subway. And then you can pitch that around. See where it fits best in the mix. Something else that layers in here pretty well is a sub in the background. I have a few sub loops, because subs are really a pain to get sounding exactly the way you want them to within a modular system or even within hardware. So I have some that I have that are loops that I can move around here. And because each one of the controls that I have for the black box, which I should show you what I'm doing with this, I'm doing all of this on here, on the launch controls, so each one of these is a channel in the black box. So if I bring up a sub loop, right, or if I bring up a different one, I can pitch them as well. So I have a pitch control here. And I can get it to fit in with whatever I'm doing at that moment. So it gives me an opportunity to use the exact same subs, because they tend to have really similar patterns, at least in the way that I do stuff. And I like them to just be kind of background, almost like I have with the atmosphere. The sub is just kind of a low atmosphere for me to kind of help fill things out. And then once I get that as kind of a background, kind of an ambient thing, then I think what I like to do is start to bring in a kick. But obviously lower tempo, we're down at 100 BPM, so this isn't gonna be like some sort of slamming kick. We could put in something like, say, more like a heartbeat. And if I bring the drive way down, it's gonna sound kind of muffled, which is what I'd like at the start. And then I can bring that up. Next, we can bring in something a little percussive. So we're missing something in kind of the high frequencies. You know, we have that snap, and that's kind of it, the snap and the little bit of percussion. But we can bring in something that's a little bit more more recognizable. So I love to use the Archer's rig for this. I love having something that I can bring in that can have a tone, but at the same time is very much a percussive instrument, and that can be dialed in as easily as this. So if we put it like right now, it's on the noise setting. That's what the N is here, if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, it's on the noise engine. So if we just were to put in a couple of little triggers here, just in random spots, and then bring that up. And this is really easy to manipulate when you're performing. So to be able to open up decay on this, take out the effects now for the moment. Then you've got effects and filter here. So if you don't want all that low end content, you can filter it up. So this was originally designed to be a hi-hat engine, so that's why you can filter it up with that high pass and it becomes like almost hi-hatty, but I try to keep it more tonal than that. And with the effects, you can also adjust this as well. The effect that I have built in here is, or that I'm using in here, is kind of like a band pass and a bit crush, I think. I can't remember exactly. And again, bring the decay down, you get something really percussive, and then you can open up that decay. I have this running through an insert effect, so most of the voices in here, so the bass line, the pizza, the Archer's rig, and the BIA all have an insert effect, and I generally just put reverb on it just to give them a little bit of character. So I can bring up the reverb on this. And I find that it just kind of helps things fit in. Reverb tends to push things backwards. If you think of a mix as three-dimensional, so you've got left and right, you've got loud and soft, being able to have something be forward or back in the mix, and reverb pushes back. So if you add reverb, you can kind of make things be not quite as noticeable while still being noticeable, which is pretty sweet. And the more reverb you add, the farther back it goes. So it sounds like it's way in the back of the room, and if you take the reverb off, it sounds like it's being hit right in front of you. So using reverb to place things forward and back in a mix is pretty fun. And so you want this, you know, a sound like this, for me, I want this to be heard and noticeable, but not in your face. Because that still leaves room now. So now we've got kind of a groove, background, drums, atmosphere, percussive sounds that are kind of in the background. So this gives us the opportunity still to have space for a lead or a melody or a vocal or some other sound. You can add in a bass line as well. Generally, I would add in a higher bass, not quite so low, because there's a lot going on in the low end, but there's room for that. So let's do just like a regular. Take the sub oscillator off there. Right, so now we've got something, again, single note, and it's one of the things I love about the Oxy is that you can put in things on a pattern and decide the gate that you like. You can decide the rhythm and the kind of groove that you're looking for, so you can make that as something that you like, but then you can go in and adjust the different sounds. So for example, if I wanted to do, so if I want to go to that channel, I can go in and I can do random generation. So I can have it be like slightly randomly generated. right? So you can generate random things like that, or we can go back to our individual or our same pitch. Then you can go in and make other adjustments. So like, let's say we want to have just on and off beat, just to kind of add a little bit of bounce. Maybe we want to jump up an octave. Let's make this one. So now I've gotten things fit in kind of in almost every frequency range. Now you can get really playful with this, and you can start to move things. You can start to mess around with sound design. For example, we've got our kind of main element here. With this, you can start to move it around with an LFO if you want. Another thing that's fun with this setup is I can run things on a send through the Ghost, which has delay, reverb, and bandpass filter with resonance. So you can put it through with some delay and reverb, and it'll make some echo and some kind of atmosphere and background and stuff. But then when you start to sweep the filter, you pick out different harmonics, and it can sound pretty cool. So let's send our Archer's rig through there. It works really well with percussive elements. So once we have that sitting through there, you can see the pattern that it kind of makes with the delay and the reverb. But then if we start to move where that peak is in the band pass, increase the sound a little. Starts to pick out those higher frequencies as we move the band pass up, and then it just affects that part. Then you can bring it down and start to do some of the lower frequencies. Bring the filter back down. All these bits, these frequencies that are coming out of this, they're all coming from the Archer's rig. So subtle changes in filtering changes what goes into the Ghost. Subtle changes in the send changes what goes into the Ghost, and then you can change filter frequency where that resonant peak is, so what it picks up. See if we move it up much higher. We can adjust the filter timing. on the second send of the mixer here, I have that going into the Coslin, which is a frequency shifter. And then the Coslin goes through a filter and then comes back into its own channel. So it basically creates a new voice from a voice that's already there. So I can send something to this and bring up the level. And then adjust the filter. Then I can change the frequency of the shifting. And I have the FM modulation on this as well. So again, without the frequency shifting, this is the sound. But then when you layer it with the frequency shifted version of it, because that's coming into its own channel here, it can also be sent out to the Ghost on its own. So then that's a whole new set of harmonics and frequencies that this Ghost can pick up. So when I do music like this, it's kind of fun for me because you have that kind of underlying heartbeat of a beat, but there's not anything to really make you dance other than, I don't know, like abstract random dancing. So what's fun sometimes with something like this is to bring in, say, a hi-hat, like an offbeat hat or an offbeat ride maybe. Let's try a ride. It can also be fun to bring in 16th hats, and that gives you kind of something that drives it along in the background. Turn my level down just a little bit. It sounds like I'm clipping a little there from what you guys are saying. How about that? See if that's any better. So you can see kind of building up from just a basic kind of bass-ish part at the beginning, then adding in some atmospheric sounds, some background sounds, then bringing in a pulse, bringing in some percussion, adding in some doubled or distorted versions of the voices that were already there to kind of add some interest, and then do some movement in there using an LFO or changing up the delay speed, the delay rate within the Ghost to add in some variation and some randomness. It can give you a lot of interest in one thing with very few individual elements. And so that's kind of what I wanted to show you with this, was how to bring in not too many elements and having each of them do something that's really subtle so that it doesn't take away from the other elements, but it just adds to them. It just adds something interesting. It adds a little bit of variation. Maybe you don't catch it each time through, you just catch a little spark of it at sometimes. And so that can be something that's a lot of fun for doing things like this that are a bit more minimal. Now, something that can be also a bunch of fun is to then, once you've created something like this, you've created something that's a little bit more, I don't know, atmospheric. I don't want to say ambient because it's not really ambient music, but like more down tempo. Then bring this back up to a higher tempo. Let's say, let's do 135. Why not? Then you can find that what you hear in this at this tempo is you'll hear things that you don't hear at the other one. The delays and things like that will act differently. They'll overlap with each other. So sometimes when you're searching for an idea of something to do, even if you're looking for if you're looking to make music that's at a higher BPM, starting off at a really low BPM and making something cool and then jacking up that tempo can give you a whole bunch of inspiration, a whole bunch of ideas. So let's give it a try. I don't know what it's going to sound like because we just made it, but let's see. Keep like a breakbeat kind of kick with this. So this is exactly the same thing that we were playing before, other than I switched up the kick, but exactly the same instruments. We can start to bring back in some of the other instruments like the bass line. Bring in a percussive element with the archer's rake. Let's see what that sounds like going through the effects now. No, I don't think it's cable problems. I think that I've been messing around with recording things differently. So I had all my kind of gain staging all messed up. So we're doing it live. can bring back in the Coslin. Maybe with a little less effect. So again, this is exactly the same thing that we were doing at 100 BPM, but now we're at 135. And it has a totally different vibe, not only the speed, but the way the sounds interact with each other is really different when you get to a different tempo. Just changing up that tempo, not only did it make it faster, I mean, obviously that's going to have an impact. You know, obviously bringing something up and bringing up the tempo is going to have an impact on the vibe just from the sense of making it feel faster or feel more energetic. But what I wanted to show you guys was a way to really hear how those sounds interact differently with each other when they're being played at different tempos, because they all have different, you know, decay lengths, and the delays have certain timing, and so all of that changes when you change up the tempo, and so it can make it really interesting the way they interact with each other, especially when you have a setup like what we were doing here, where we're starting from the basics of really nothing and then having that kind of build with little tiny pieces at a time. These pieces aren't like in your face kind of cliche melodies, you know, like where it's like, okay, here's the melody, that's what you're supposed to listen to. It's what's key to music in this style, this kind of more hypnotic techno style. The idea is to have those things be very sparse, but the way they interact with each other starts to feel like different evolving melodies. And when you have them interact with each other differently, like with delay timings or on sends or going through different effects or at different tempos, it can really make them make some interesting things happen with the things that you write in kind of a different context. So it can give you some really cool ideas. I love to do this when I'm kind of blocked and I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm not sure what I want to write or what I want to record. So I'll maybe change up tempo, or I'll use totally different instruments. Sometimes I'll, you know, set up a bass instrument to be a hi-hat, or set the different modules to do different things than what they would normally do, and that can inspire some ideas. And then once you create those ideas, then you can change up how you have that module set and have it do something totally different. So yeah, so if you have any questions about this or any of this stuff, please put them in the chat. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has in here, which it looks like there might be a couple. Let's see. Tuning in from South Devon, UK. Welcome. You're in bed by 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve. It's 11:40 p.m. in Germany now. All right. Played a live set on 21st December using my Oxy One, Syntact model samples, and SP404 for effects. found that I would have done with a few better presets in my Syntactic. I was using the multi and Oxy. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I use these devices now. Since I got the Oxy One, I kind of use these as multi-channel synth devices or multi-voice synth devices. So, you know, something like the Digitone 2 now has 16 voices that I can play around with. So for me, that's like having 16 individual synths here on my desk, and being able to travel with 16 synths in a package that's this big is pretty powerful. And so that's why I like, especially these two new boxes, just because they, you know, between the two of them, it's 32 channels. Obviously, you'd never use that all at the same time. And the way I play, I don't use them at the same time. The way I play, I'll mix and match. I'll pick a voice here, a voice there. I'll change from one to the other. So that's why during my shows, you'll never see me change kits or change patterns. It's actually kind of funny. Like if you go into the Oxy and you go into the pattern mode, there's nothing there because I don't save any patterns. Or if you go into into here, let's see here. If you were going to go into, go into projects and manage projects, you'll see there's only two. There's the presets that came with it and my project that I'm working on. So I don't save a bunch of different projects, a bunch of different patterns, a bunch of different sounds, those things. I'll save sounds sometimes into the memory so that I can recall them later. But generally what I like to do is make them new all the time. So constantly using new sounds. If I have something that's like really amazingly good and it's something that I don't think I could make again that I just happen across, a lot of times I'll save that as a sound, but that's pretty rare. I mean, generally what I'm doing with these is I'm sound designing live while I play, very much like I do in the modular. And so that way it doesn't really, you know, there's no real incentive to saving a preset because you're not necessarily going back to sounds that you used before. And maybe it's a little hippy dippy, but I like the idea of like clean slate, start from scratch, always moving forward, always doing something new, constantly evolving, constantly trying to get better and more interesting and all of that stuff. And I feel like, and maybe this is just me, you know, subconsciously or like worrying about this, but I feel like with me, if I save things and if I, you know, create patterns and create presets, that will make me kind of stagnate. And I'll stay in that same song. I'll stay in that same group of songs, in that pattern. And I hear it from students in my courses all the time, that they feel like they get stuck and they're not sure how to move forward, how to get to the next thing. And a lot of times it's because they've gotten comfortable with what they have, whether it's a modular patch, whether it's a certain project in a hardware box, and they always go back to the same stuff and kind of rehash the same thing rather than constantly trying to evolve and get better and improve and kind of move forward. And so it can be beneficial for your learning. It can also be very cathartic to just like delete everything and start from scratch. For me, it really encourages creativity, especially if you have your gear set up in such a way that it's inspiring. So like what we were talking about before, ways that the gear can generate random notes, or that you can do random probabilities like in the Electron boxes, or being able to pitch things in a different way and have it sound totally different, changing up tempo, frequency shifting and mixing sounds and then frequency shifting those. So all of those are things that are kind of like inspirational ideas that come out of the gear. And so when you have that, you don't necessarily need the presets as much. You don't necessarily need to have those things that you always do as much. I find that I need those when the gear that I'm using is not inspiring me to do other stuff. Then it's important to have presets that are inspiring or sounds that you've made that you really love. And that way you can have those ones that you can go back to. But for me, I always like to try to clear it out, Zen garden method, wipe it clean and start over again. I was always inspired by, there's those people in, I can't remember if it's India or Nepal, Tibet, maybe, I can't remember. The ones that do the sand painting, where they use colored sand to create these beautiful mandalas, these beautiful, super intricate patterns. And then they create them, and once they're finished, everybody kind of looks at it, they enjoy it, and then they sweep it away. And the idea is that it was there to be enjoyed and to be savored, but the whole idea is that the pleasure and the fulfillment comes from the process of making it, from the creativity, from the inspiration that you get, the ideas you get, the focus that it forces you to do is really great for blocking out any other issues you have going on in your life, because you can kind of focus on things. And I very much approach the way I make music the same way, is that it's all about the process. It's all about making something that's in that moment, and not going back and repeating things that I've done in the past. Because I just find, for me personally, that makes me stagnate, which I've tried not to do. So let's see here. Hi from Newfoundland. Awesome. Germany also. Where in Germany? Helsinki, Finland. Sweet. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, this is where we got the distortion and clipping. Thanks for those. Let's see, Mikey44. Hey, everybody. Much better. If you change the tempo, try to be at 120, 125, 130, and so on, or you don't care. It could just be 121.5. Yeah, I don't care. Honestly, it's because I'm trying to create things that are out of the ordinary. And so for me, like, I just kind of chose 100 because whatever, it's a round number. So I just went to 100. It could be 97.3. It doesn't really matter. And again, it really depends on what you're feeling. I find that if you always use a certain range of tempo, sometimes it's really nice to use something that's totally out of the ordinary for you. So let's say you're normally making ambient music. You're normally doing it, I don't know, 80 BPM or 100 BPM. And all of a sudden you say, you know what, I'm just going to try to make something at 140 or 150, and you make that, and you try to make something using the thoughts that you have as an artist, but in a totally different tempo range, and then slow it back down to where you normally make it. Kind of the opposite of what I just did, but the point of it wasn't go slow and that makes the fast sound good. The point is get out of your normal repetitive way of doing things, and that will inspire you. And I think there's all this talk, particularly in the whole kind of synth tube world, about buying gear and gas and what do you need and how much do you need, and you don't need this and you do need that. And I think a lot of that can be solved or cured when you've dialed into something that is inspirational, and then you are constantly looking for different ways to use the exact same gear. And, like go in and take, a melodic synth that you have, a keyboard, and make it sound like a kick drum, or turn it into a hi-hat, or make it into a percussion instrument. Try to make all those sounds, and you'll find that there's inspiration in all of that exploration. And so it will kind of develop your skills. You can by getting outside of your comfort zone, that's when you learn. That's where you're developing, is at the edge of that comfort zone is where you're constantly learning and constantly developing. So you always want to push that. So if you get stuck and you feel like you're just not inspired, do things totally differently. Delete things, or if you can't bring yourself to delete everything, just start a fresh project and be completely new and fresh with new sounds. Load them up differently. Don't load up that same sample pack, those same presets you always use. If you're doing modular, unpatch your case and patch it in a weird new way, a way that you wouldn't normally do it. Or like I said, like here, I can give you an example of this. This was something I was messing around with the other day. So if you take something like the BIA, and I will just do a little pattern with the BIA. Yeah. So the BIA can be melodic, it can be tonal, it can be all sorts of different things, right? So if we take this, I can make this into pretty quickly into a hi-hat. Right? So now it can be a hi-hat. But then we can say, okay, I want to use this device now to be a kick drum. So let's Then I would pitch this down, by the way. Right? So you can turn individual synths into totally different instruments by moving them around. Then you can pitch this back up again. And we can make this. Right? So you can find a whole bunch of different things that one instrument can do. So push yourself. If you're always using an instrument as a certain thing, push yourself to try to use it as a totally different thing. And that's going to be something that can inspire some creativity from that device. And you'll come up with some new ideas of things that you can do with that when then you get into a performance or a production or whatever you're doing. So it's a great way to stretch the gear that you have. I mean, any one piece, any one of these groove boxes or whatever can kind of do all the sounds. It's just a matter of learning how to make them. And the way you learn how to make them is by exploring. Like, intentionally go in and mess things up. Intentionally go in and destroy what you had, make something that sounds horrible, and then tweak it back into where it sounds like something. And that's going to drive a ton of learning and a ton of creativity. So let's see here. What do we have? You finally got your Oxy 1. Sweet. You're going to love it. Well, at least I do. That's for sure. With your workflow, what do you do if you had a really nice flow with sounds and so on? How do you save that? I would think, oh, how was that exact sound? Well, I guess the uncomfortable answer is I don't. I don't save sounds generally. I mean, I can save sounds like in the Digitact or in the Digitone, but I generally don't at all. What I generally will do is like kind of pay attention to where I found that sound, what it was like. And again, the more you practice messing your gear up and getting back to a good place, the easier it is to remake sounds once you've made them in the first place. So the more comfortable you get that you'll be able to get back to a sound you like, the easier it becomes to just delete that sound or that pattern or that melody. And I find that that's what really drives a ton of creative energy for me personally, is to just delete those things and force myself to do it again. It's like if you want to learn a language, you have to go to a place where you don't have anyone who speaks your language. So you have to be forced to do it. And this is a way to kind of force yourself to do things, force yourself to delete things, force yourself to not save things. And it's a great way to develop. And then as you get going over time, there's going to be things that are really truly worth saving. Like maybe it's a track that you want to release, and then when you do release it, you want to be able to recreate that track when you play. So sometimes those things are worth saving, but for the vast majority of people, that's not what they're doing with their music. They're just saving in here so that they don't have to stress about playing something live. And so having the opportunity to be comfortable doing those things live and improvising live is a really freeing feeling, because you're not stuck with the music you have. I can't tell you how many people I hear saying, yeah, I need to allot a whole bunch of time to create a new live set. And it's like, think about the stress that goes with that. Now, you're going to be performing that set where? For who? What's the vibe? What's the energy? And for me, I can't do that in advance, because there's something inside me going, if I decide in advance what I'm going to play, how I'm going to play it, what the energy and the vibe is going to be, it means that I'm not considering the crowd. I don't care if they're having a good time or not. I'm just going to play the thing I play, period. And if they like it, great. And if they don't, whatever, who cares? And so for me, that's difficult. Years of DJing and kind of selecting on the fly and not pre-programming any sets got me in that mode of, what do I play when? What does the crowd need now? How do I keep things going? And that's one of the reasons why I love playing long sets. I would be the happiest if every set that I played for a show was at least 2 hours long, if not longer. Because then you really get a chance to create something that goes with the vibe. It's a nightmare when you have to try to do something in 15 minutes, because then you're just like, get up there, jam through something really quick, and then leave. And there's no way to really tell a story. And especially with this kind of music, the stories that we tell with this kind of music are more long form. It's more like a feature film and not like a TikTok video. And so to be able to do something over time and take people, through different emotions and make it high energy and low energy and get them grooving, and then make them, scream and cheer, and then get them back grooving again. That's part of the whole experience, rather than just get out there and just like slam through 15 minutes of tracks that you pre-prepared and then go away. So it's one reason why I really love this, why I really love performing this way and having things set up this way. So let's see what else. Don't forget to strike the like. Yes, thank you. Like and subscribe and share. Hey, from Belgium. Where are you in Belgium? Brussels? Let me know. Nobsonlandia. Suburban Chicago. Nice. I think you meant Nobconlandia, maybe? Let's see. Greifswald, a small city in Germany. All right, sweet. Good to see you too, breathalyzer. Let's see, good thoughts on varying tempo. Thanks. I do too much down tempo. See, I feel like sometimes I do too much up tempo. I spend too much time at 140, so it's nice to kind of push myself away. But because that's the music that I really like, I love to push myself away and then bring it back to that and see what I learned from this, what I developed from that to bring it back. I'm not going to be out there like playing ambient sets, because it's just not the thing that interests me the most. And so, but I do love to take those skills and that inspiration and bring it back into the 140 BPM stuff. So let's see. Z Perps. Hey, random question. Are you using Oxy One as your master clock or PAMs? Oxy One is my master clock. I have this cable going out, which is clock out, going into the clock in the PAMs, and then that is clocking other devices. So it's clocking the Ghost, the Meta, Just Ghost in Meta right now, I think. Yeah, and then I have a couple of other things that are going out from this, and those are actually, one of these is clocking my studio modular because I was doing some stuff together, so that's why this cable is kind of going off into the distance. And then I have a couple things that are modulation, but kind of weird random modulation. So one is a sine wave going into the Coslin because there's an FM. You can dial in the FM here. So not only do you frequency shift, but you can also frequency modulate with an external source. So I'm doing that. And then, where's this one going to? Don't remember. That's clock for the Ghost. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Can't remember what else I had going on here. Oh, that's right. No. What was that? FM. I love having all black cables, but one of the disadvantages is that you have to kind of trace everything in a different way. Ah, that's right. So two are going into the Ghost. One is going into the clock, and the other one is going into the CV for the frequency. So if I want, so right now, like the cutoff CV is down to 0, so I'm not using that. But if I bring this up, it will then send that LFO to here, and it will allow it. So it's completely attenuated, so it's not doing anything right now. But if I decide, if I'm doing something and I'm like, you know what, I need to go do something else, I could just turn that up and go, and this will continue to move and do fun, exciting things. So that's what's coming out of the pans. But I have a lot of empty slots, and what I do with those empty slots is, if you notice, they're all at different clock divisions. I don't know if you can see all the different tempos that they're, slowly fading in and out or beeping really quick. So all of those I just leave, and when I'm playing live, I generally have a bunch of cables with me. And so if I get an idea of something that would be cool to modulate, I can just plug it in and I'll patch that and just let it go. But I don't generally leave those patched because I don't like to have the same sounds all the time. So I'll patch things live on the fly if I get an idea that kind of inspires me. So that's why I leave those spaces empty there. So that's how I'm using the pans. Let's see, what else do we have here? Great workflow, thanks. I'll try breaking out of my song by song structure. Thanks for the push. Simple ideas can spark big changes. I totally agree. And and I'm not here to say song by song is a bad thing to do. I'm just saying, for me, it doesn't work. That's not the way I enjoy performing. I enjoy the creativity and the inspiration of improvisation, of doing things live. And when I set out to do a live set after basically 3 decades of DJing and producing, I didn't want to DJ with hardware. I didn't want to create a whole bunch of tracks and then just go like, okay, track 1, then track 2, then track 3, and just do like filters and effects. And that was kind of it, with things that were pre-made. Because for me, personally, that just felt too much like DJing. I was trying to get as far away from that as I could. And the idea that I had in my head since I started was the idea of live producing rather than hardware DJing. And the thing is, with hardware and live performance, there's so many differing degrees of what is live. And so we all have to kind of choose our own version. What do we want to do? How much do we want to pre-prepare? Like, I pre-prepare my sounds. I pre-prepare certain, foundational basic drum patterns. So with all of those things, there's, I'm pre-preparing those things, but for me, they're elements. They're things that I can use within a performance. So I use those elements to then write music live on the fly based on the vibe I'm getting from the crowd, or the mood I'm in at the moment, or the feeling, or any sort of inspiration that kind of hits me. And so that was kind of the direction that I set out to do. And that's why I've made a lot of the decisions that I have as far as what gear I have and how I use it. It's just because that's the way I choose to perform. If you choose to perform in the way where you write songs and you put them out, that's amazing. That's great. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time writing, where I spend a lot of time practicing improvising. So we're each doing different things, but then all that really matters is that the crowd that's there to watch the show has a great time. So if they have a great time when you're playing tracks that you've pre-prepared, that's amazing. And if they have a great time when you're improvising, that's amazing too. And I think that finding some balance between those is kind of where we all end up wanting to find our space, right? Nobody wants to just press play and stand there and watch their gear do everything, right? Which is why I don't think there's a single piece of gear out there that I even know how to use the song mode on, because of that exact reason. Like for me, that was never even a thought, because the thought of pressing play and then watching my gear go through something that I made is just like so foreign to me. Like I would never do that, just because that's not what I'm into. So we're all looking for that kind of shade in the middle. You know, that what shade of gray are we in the middle of all the different versions of live versus pre-prepared. So yeah, let's see what else. Anything airbrush. Hey, what's going on? So glad I'm able to watch live. Me too, in the UK. Well, you're in the middle of the night, but it's Saturday night, right? So what are you gonna do? You can stay up and watch this and sleep in the morning. Have booked my hotel and tickets for Super Booth. Awesome. Yes, I will be there. I have a couple of events already planning to do over there, which will be super fun. Hoping to book some more. I have some open dates in Europe. So if any of you know any promoters that are looking to book someone, I'll be in Europe from the 1st to the 12th of May. So hit me up. I'm more than excited to get out there to play some more. What else here? Antwerp, Belgium. Awesome. The diamond capital of the world. Welcome from Antwerp. I've been through Antwerp a couple of times and I've never stopped there. I've been through on the train multiple times, but for some reason never stopped. I'll have to try that again. Let's see. When I do these extended wind controller pieces, there's a zone you can only get to after about 10 minutes and it opens up to whatever. Yeah, I agree. And this goes back, you know, for as much as I set out in my live music, my live hardware journey to kind of get away from DJing, there's a lot that I draw from DJing. And one of the things is that I come from, you know, since I've DJed for decades, I come from a time when DJ sets were, sometimes they were the whole night. Sometimes you open to close. But more often than not, they were 2, 3, 4 hours. And so I got used to that idea of I will take people from point A to point B, and it'll be, you know, it'll be like the Lord of the Rings. We'll kind of take through the map and we'll go over the mountains and we'll go through the caves. And it's a real journey in the sense of we're going somewhere. We're going to do something. There's going to be an experience that's going to be really different because you're going to have a bunch of little experiences along the way. And so for me, that mentality kind of stays in my mind. And so when I come to this, I approach it very much the same way. I'm like, you know, when I'm getting started in a set, like if you listen to my New Year's Eve one, starting off, it was really super mellow and atmospheric because I'm like, okay, we're getting started. We're just starting down the path. And normally you never go like full speed and jump right in when you're going to take a trip. You ease into it. You kind of move things along. And so it's really, it can be really inspiring, but it can also be really intimidating, I know, to look at kind of a blank spot in the timetable and say, I've got to fill that whole spot with myself and stuff. So you really got to put yourself out there. But at the same time, it's for me the most inspiring. So it's what I really, really love. Let's see what else. Walking my dog equals typos. Nice. Walking your dog in the middle of the night. Got it. Hey, what's up, Chris? Got someone in here from one of my courses early on, listening, as he says. Let's see. If you're in the south of Germany in May, let me know. But at least we meet again at Super Booth. Yeah, that would be awesome. And, you know, it's funny because when I tell people like I have open spots for gigs, and I'll be there from the 1st to the 12th, they're always like, oh, but you'll be in Berlin and I'm like 2 hours away. And like as an American, that just cracks me up. I'm like, 2 hours, like most people here drive 2 hours to work. It's just like you commute in traffic for 2 hours. So just the fact that, you know, being in Europe, honestly, these European dates are open. Really, it's anywhere in Europe because it's super easy with a flight or a train to get anywhere. So anything during those days, I have something in Berlin on the 1st and something in Berlin on the 10th. But I have 2nd and 3rd, which is Friday, Saturday, and then the 9th, which is a Friday. So if any of those dates are open, that would be awesome. And it can be really anywhere in Europe. I'm happy to travel to wherever. Let's see what else. I don't do modular, have looked at it. Good, stay away. But do you use groove boxes and other synths, but some of your techniques can relate to that. Yeah, I mean, all of it is the same. I mean, all a modular is all the same things that one of these boxes does, but it's just without any menus, and it just looks more complicated than kind of a traditional synth. Because if you take a traditional synth, it has all these same things. They're just wired behind the panel, so you don't see any of the wires. So really the only difference here is that the wires are on the front so that I can change it and I can move, I can route, a certain thing through a different filter, through a different effect. Whereas with a traditional hardware synth, you're kind of stuck with the way the designer of that instrument thought was the best way for that instrument. Now, some are semi-modular, or some have matrix and ways that you can route things, which is great. It's one reason why my favorite kind of hardware synth that I have over there is the Polybrute, because I love having the matrix, so you can route things very much in a modular way. It's another reason why I love the Octatrack, because the Octatrack is kind of like a modular in a box, because everything can be routed to different things and in different ways. So it makes it really creative to use, because you're not stuck with one workflow. That's the only workflow that's there. So yeah, everything that I do in modular also applies to hardware, with the exception of like the patching part. But other than that, being able to use different things with send effects, with through a mixer, with master effects, all of that stuff. You can do that with a ton of different groove boxes. So yeah, it all applies. Like in my course that I teach, I teach 2 different online courses. One is for improvised live performance, kind of like what we're doing here, and then the other one is for hybrid production. So using your live performance gear in production and being able to multi-track and edit and remix and all of that stuff, but using hardware as an integral component of your production. And that's one of the things we talk about all the time, is that it doesn't matter the gear. So sometimes people in my course will be 100% modular. Other times they will have no modular. I've had people in the course that were doing it with an iPad and a groove box. Like it really doesn't matter. You find the setup that works for you, and if it works for you, that means it is the best setup in the world. Like, don't ever let anyone tell you different. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you have to do your setup a certain way. If it works great for you, then that is the best setup in the world. And push all those haters away, right? So whether you're doing modular, whether you're using external sequencers, whether you're doing a groove box, whether you're doing internal sequencers, whether you're doing samples or synths or anything, it's all just a matter of workflow and what you do, what you love to do, right? So find the workflow that you love, that clicks for you, the instrument, groove box, modular, sequencer, whatever it is that clicks for your brain. Find that, and you'll have an amazing time. Don't get something just because somebody else uses it, or just because someone else says that it's good. Anytime I say something's good, what I'm saying is that it's good for me. It works really well for me. That's why every piece of gear you see here, the reason it is here is because it works really well for me. But some of you may hate some of these pieces of gear. You guys may have things that you love that I've worked with that I just can't stand, but that's cool. That's how it should be. We live in an amazing time where there is gear for everyone. Everyone has their options of what to use. So use what works for you. I have people that I know that have made amazing music just using apps on their phone. You can use Koala Sampler on your phone and make killer music. So it really doesn't matter. Don't ever let anybody tell you. Find those things that you love to use. And that's for me, the most important is if it's something that is inspiring and fun to play, then I want to use it. I want to make music on it. So that's for me, the number one most important thing to choosing gear. Let's see what else we have going on in here. Big fan of the channel. Thanks, Pierre. First time watching live. You live in Japan. Pierre Labori does not sound like a Japanese name, but I believe you that you live in Japan. 8:46 a.m. Awesome. Well, good morning. Enjoy your coffee. Have a nice breakfast while we breakfast in beats. That's kind of a cool thing to do. So awesome. Well, welcome. Welcome from Japan. So we've got all the way around the world. Oh, Honey Smack. Awesome. Speaking of all around the world, Honey Smack's in Australia. So, and he is an amazing live performer, amazing hardware guy. He has been doing this forever. He is one of the gurus of the thing. So go check out all of his stuff because his stuff is awesome, for sure. So check it out. Let's see. Will I see you at NAM? Yes, you will. I should qualify that. As of right now, I'm arriving on the Friday night, I think. Maybe even the Saturday morning, because I'm going specifically for Buchla and Friends. And then I'm actually playing the Buchla and Friends after party in LA, the one that's sponsored by III, these guys, the headphone company. So I'm gonna be playing that after party. So I may go early, I may change my flight and go a couple days early just to go to NAMM, but I hadn't planned on it. But if you're gonna be there, then yes, I will. Awesome, I would love to see you there. I made you blush. Whatever, you know how awesome you are. You don't even need to. So you'll be at NAMM and Buchla and Friends. Sweet. Doing stuff with, you work for Melbourne now, correct? I believe. Modular Melbourne Instruments. Yes. Pierre, I'm French, but I've been living here for 15 years. Ah, en français. Alors on peut parler français si vous voulez. Je peux faire je peux faire mes live streams en français si vous voulez. But I can't do it in Japanese, sorry. Let's see, greetings from Ukraine. Awesome, Sergey, welcome. Welcome, welcome. So as of right now, we have Ukraine, Australia, Japan, Finland, Germany, Belgium, US, Canada, all over the place. Gotta love that. That's awesome. It's one of my favorite things about these. Like I'm doing this from a studio in the basement of my house in Colorado. So it's awesome to be able to push everything out and have it find its way around the world. It makes things lots and lots of fun. Honey Smack, Melbourne Instruments. Yeah, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. I knew that you had changed fairly recently. But I'm also playing Travarsi's party. Oh, sweet. That's on Thursday night, right? I may or may not be there. I'm going to try to. I told her I was going to try to get there for that. So we will see. Tu parles super bien français. Merci beaucoup. J'ai travaillé 11 ans pour Club Med. Et j'ai appris le français avec eux. Let's see. Hi from Switzerland. Sweet. One of my favorite places. I actually lived in Switzerland for a year, and I actually love that place. It's very much like Colorado, where I live. Scenery-wise, it looks very much like Colorado, but I love it there. I lived there for a year in 97, 98, something like that. And then I just went back a couple years ago, took a ski trip back there with my sons, which was a ton of fun. It was fun to go. When I worked there, I was working for Club Med at the time, and I was a ski instructor, and I was teaching skiing in San Moritz in Pontresina. And so to take them back there and show them around the area where I used to live and show them all show them the different mountains that are all in Engadin. And it was awesome. I love it. I love Switzerland. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. Tunisia, sweet. Awesome. I have been to Tunisia as well, also with Club Med. I was in Jerba, which was amazing and beautiful. And yeah, I loved it there. Tunisia is a beautiful place. I think people don't realize how pretty the ocean and the beaches are in Tunisia. It's an amazing, amazing place. Let's chat in the next week. Yes, hit me up, we'll do a Zoom. I would love to. That would be tons of fun. Serco unites the modular world. That's it. This is the United Nations of modular. We just bring everyone together from all around the world. We get everyone from every corner of the world. So, yes, I'm the warm, gentle hug. Now you're going to make me blush. That's hilarious. The warm, gentle hug that unites everyone. That is too funny. That's hilarious. So make sure if you have any questions, throw them in there, because there was a couple different things that I wanted to do on this live stream, and we're still going to keep going with it for a little bit. One of them was to do some music, which we did back at the beginning, and then the other part of it was to and we're going to do some more music as well. But the other part of it was kind of an Ask Me Anything. It's the first, it's the first one of the year. So I would love to chat about whatever, where the channel's going, what we're doing, my courses, any questions you have. Let's talk about what's going on in music, new gear that's out there, cool new stuff that's come out, travel, gigs, you name it, I'm here. So we can chat about it all. So let's see, when I visited Black Rock Casino in Denver, it looked like Switzerland to me. Oh yeah. So when you go up into those canyons outside of Denver, it's very much like Switzerland. It's you get those kind of steeper mountains. The farther you get up into the mountains get bigger, but the valleys get really wide. So in Switzerland, the mountains are like this, and in Colorado, the mountains are like this, but also very high. I grew up in a town called Breckenridge, and the elevation of my town, which was at the bottom of the mountains there for skiing, the elevation of my town was just under 3,000 meters. It was like 2,900 meters. And then the mountains there go up to just about 4,000 meters. So it's crazy, it's high. Definitely. Let's see. We'll try to be in Berlin if you will be there. I will for sure be there. So you gotta make it to Berlin. I will be there. Like I said, I'll be in Europe from the 1st to the 12th of May. And I have a bunch of open dates. I do have a couple of gigs kind of at either end of that, but I do have a bunch of open dates. So if you're anywhere in Europe and you are a promoter or you know a promoter that's looking to book someone, have them hit me up, because I have open dates, and I will hop a train, or, you guys are lucky you have cheap airlines like EasyJet. You can just take a quick flight and go somewhere. But I do love the train. The train is probably my favorite way to travel. Last year, after Superbooth, I went to Brussels for a few days to do a show and to hang out with the Schachmatt Modular guys. And I took the train from Berlin to Brussels, the overnight train, and it was awesome. I would do that again in a second. I love night trains. I love sleeping on trains. I love going into the compartment, setting up my gear, and then like playing music all night as the scenery goes by. It's a blast. I love that. So anywhere in Europe, let me know. Let's see, what else? You have a growing, I think you mean industrial probably. But yeah, in Tunisia, awesome. That's very cool. I would love to go back to Tunisia to play. So if you know any promoters, hit me up. Tunisia is beautiful. The closest I've been was 2 summers ago. We were on a family trip to Europe and finished up the last part in Morocco. So we were in North Africa, but on the other side of North Africa. But I haven't been back to Tunisia. I think the last time I was there was in like 2002, maybe 2001, 2002, something like that. So it was a while ago, quite a while ago. Let's see, Pierre, I'm currently building a live modular setup, but getting the modules over here in Japan is crazy expensive because of how weak the yen has become. Currently trying to get a battering ram and Oxymeta. Well, if you saw my video that I did for Perfect Circuit, you will know that the battering ram and the Oxymeta were my 2 favorite modules of 2024. They, for me, they are 2 of the most the useful, functional, effective. I mean, I don't know how many adjectives there are. I use them consistently throughout every single set. These 2 modules, battering ram and meta. I have to say also the Archer's rig has kind of like really moved in there. I originally got it because it was a hi-hat module, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool. I could have, in my case, I could have everything if I just had kick and hat, and then I can use the others for percussion and leads and all that stuff. It would be really cool. Then I realized the Archer's rig, as much as it is a cool hat module, so here, I'll show you what a cool hat module it is. So like I can go to, let's see, one of the better hat engines. Yeah, it's like I can go here. right? So you can use this as a hat. You can use this however you want, right? So like we could do, let's do like an offbeat hat with this. So that's kind of what it's for, right? That was the idea of the Archer's rig, was to be a hat module. But where it gets really cool is when you like get off the filter, pitch it down a little bit, and then it becomes this more tonal thing. And then you've got all of these different engines, right? So you've got like an FM engine like this. Again, these are all designed to be engines for making hi-hats, but they're so good for other things. And again, this is, it's got it has pitch control as well. So like I can take these things now. So again, this is a kick in the Archer's rig. So as a module, it's crazy powerful. So I've really been enjoying it a lot because of that. And I basically, I never use it for hi-hats. I use hi-hat samples that I have over here in the D-tact. And then I also have some hi-hats that I've done in the D-tone that I made using FM synths in here. So I've got hats in other places, and with something that sounds as cool and unique and is as fun and easy to play as the Archer's rig is, I thought like, what a waste to have it just do hi-hats. I'm actually thinking about getting a second one and having that be a hi-hat, right? Because it does sound great as a hi-hat, but I couldn't bring myself to waste all of those great sounds. So I pull those into my sets all the time. This has become kind of my go-to for like leads and like dramatic splashes and moments and stuff. I absolutely love the module. So yeah, that one, but we got started talking about the battering ram and the Meta. Those are my two favorite of the year, but the Archer's rig is sneaking in there in that same category. So let's see what else. There's some insane techno festivals in Japan. I would love to get to Japan. I've never been to Japan. Labyrinth, Rural, Bonaparte. You love it, I'm sure. Well, tell those promoters to hit me up. I would go to Japan in 1 second if I had the chance to go play there. So tell them to hit me up. Let's see. If you are driving by train in Germany, then plan delays and cancellations. Well, I have to tell you, and I heard the same thing when I was in Germany last year, and I was taking trains everywhere. And yeah, there were some that were delayed or canceled. But as somebody who has spent a large portion of my life in the United States, we don't really have trains. We have a few, they're awful, and they don't take you anywhere you want to go. Meaning that anywhere you would want to go, there's not a train. There's trains from like random city to random city, and they don't ever kind of fit. So trains here are a disaster. So the answer that I had for people when they said that when I was in Germany was, I would rather a late train than no train. And as a person who grew up with no train, it's one of my favorite things when I arrive in Europe, no matter what country I'm in. My favorite thing is to be able to just step off the plane and get in a train and go to a useful place, not like some random place that nobody wants to go to, and then you have to take a car from there anyway. That's kind of the way it is here. So I get it that they're not perfect, but man, they're way better than not having them at all. So Pierre, yeah, Archer's rig is on the list. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. I did see your video when you were explaining how you can turn the module for not just hats. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And especially, you know, like taking let's go back into the archer's rig again. So if you're using this, you can, so obviously it has a decay that's really easy to work. And changing up the effects. And then changing engines. Just kind of cycling through the different engines here. You can hear some of them are obviously set up to be hats, but you can still use them again as kind of industrial sounding percussion. This was a granular engine. Back to the FM1. So again, you see that you can do a bunch, and that's just with the voice itself. But then when you start to take that same voice and you put it through some reverb, right? So you can get a whole bunch of variation out of that. And then I like to put it through the Ghost. So that gives me those harmonics that we were talking about before. So again, this is all just kick, archer's rig, going through a couple of effects. So what I find that's really cool with the archer's rig is because it's designed to be a hat, it has a lot of great kind of snappy envelope sounds. And so you get these really cool percussive hits. And when you run those through reverbs and delays, that gets a lot more interesting than trying to put something that's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a fluffy sound through those things, because you don't really get all the dynamics of a delay or a reverb when you do that. So I love sending Archer's Rig through these different effects just because it's really supposed to be a percussive thing. And so it acts really in a really interesting way with all the other devices. So yeah, one of my favorites. Let's see what we got going here. All right. Well, if you have other questions, please pop them into the chat. I'm definitely happy to answer whatever. Again, ask me anything about whatever. Life, courses, music, travel, gigs, I don't know, living in Switzerland, whatever you want to chat about. So please put those in there. We've got a little bit longer because I want to kind of get to any of these questions that we can. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to try just a quick refresh here because sometimes the chat does not refresh. Cool. Do I use any side chaining for kicks? No, I don't actually. So I actually, let me take that back. Yes, I do sometimes when it's kind of convenient. I don't have anything that's just kind of like break your brain trying to make something sidechain because it's really not worthwhile. So I have the possibility to sidechain the Ghost, which I do sometimes, but I actually stopped doing it because it's without the right amount of attenuation and without a really short signal, it doesn't exactly do what I want it to do. I was really looking for like pumping sidechain, and it wasn't doing that. I mean, I can do it that way, but it's not the best. One of the cool things with the Exelon mixer is this I/O module. This gives me all of the channels of the mixer pre-fader and all of the channels of the mixer post-fader. So right now, all of the post-fader are going into, you can't see it, it's right here, but they're going into an audio interface so that I can multi-track into my DAW. And that way I can multi-track every one of the channels. And because it's post-fader, I'm multi-tracking the performance. So you're getting like fade-ins and sends and panning and all that stuff. So, that's why that. But then all these empty spaces up here, those are all the pre-fader. And if you look, there's one that's plugged in. That is coming from my channel 1, which is my kick. So this is a pre-fader kick. So it's coming through all the time. And I have this going out into an input in the Digitact, into one of the audio inputs, and I have that set up as the source for sidechaining things in the Digitact. And I was using that just to kind of mess around with it, but I found that it wasn't super functional. I may end up switching that up and doing that with the Digatone, but again, it's not all that important. If you are setting things up kind of the way I was showing at the beginning of this video, where you build everything based on frequencies, and I'll show you that again in a couple minutes here, but where everything is based on frequencies, then you don't have to worry about side chaining things out of the way. And so the only time then where side chaining becomes kind of important or functional is having that be as a kind of an effect, having it be like a pumping effect. And you can do that as well with LFOs. So I don't always sidechain. Sometimes I'll use LFOs for it. So it's not super important. You're right. You've obviously seen some of my videos where I talk about how it's not very important. I am not a proponent of compression in live setups. Because especially not in improvised live setups, because for me, we're constantly changing our output. We're constantly changing multiple settings, and it's over hopefully a long period of time. If we're playing a decent set, 2, 3, 4 hours. And so over that amount of time, the variety of sounds that you're going to have coming out of your system, there's no way that you could set a compressor that would properly accommodate that and that would benefit that. So part of the time it's going to sound good, and part of the time it's going to make it sound worse because you're over compressing or you're not hitting it at all. So I prefer to take the time to focus on making sure my sounds are lined up correctly. They're in the right frequency bands so that they're not stepping on one another, so I don't have to sidechain them out of the way, and then trying to keep my levels as even as I can so that I don't have to worry about compressing. So that's kind of the way I look at the whole compressor world. Any chance you could announce in advance when you do live set on YouTube? Yes, I can. The reason why I haven't been is because they've all been just kind of like, I just randomly feel like streaming. So usually I announce it, and then it will start in the amount of time it takes me to like make a thumbnail and post it in a couple places to let people know I'm about to stream. But yeah, if I do things more in advance, I tend to fit these streams in between work, and sometimes it's work travel, or sometimes it's work, like work. And so I don't always know when that time's gonna be, so I just kind of jump on when I can. But yeah, I will do better about trying to put those out there. What happened to your Inside Electronic Music podcast? I ran into some trouble getting interviews with people over the holidays. So it's been, everybody was getting ready for the holidays, end of year gigs and all of that stuff. I'm actually, when is it, the 8th? So 4 days from now, I'm going to be recording the next one, and I'll probably post that up right after. And that's going to be with my good friend Maidan, who you may be familiar with. She's a hardware performer and DJ from the States, lives in Berlin. She's a resident at Tresor in Berlin, and is a fantastic live performer. And so we're going to chat with her. She's also a label owner and has been producing and releasing records for years and years and years. And so we'll chat about all those things. So I'm going to be filming that in about 4 days. And so we'll blast that out as soon as it is available. Let's see what else. I use Ableton and sometimes Digitact, and I have a problem keeping kick and rumble consistent through the set because I keep changing the kick. But I've send to audio track with effects for the same kick. Yeah, rumbles are I don't know. I've kind of moved away from rumbles because they've almost become kind of cliche in techno right now. And I would rather have the rumble come from the kick. So if we do a kick here, one of the things that I love, again, with the battering ram is the fact that I've got control over decay. So I can do, obviously, I can make this super punchy. I can soften it up a little. I can make the envelope deeper. I can give it some drive and really make it slam, right? And go through. But one of the coolest things with this is being able to open up the decay and get that kind of low end and have it be part of the kick. Now, one thing to be really careful about if you're using the actual boom of the kick as your low end is wanting to make sure that it is the right length. Because if it's too long and it's overflowing into the next kick, it's gonna get muddy and you're gonna lose some dynamics. So if you notice now, you don't hear the transient as much because there's too many frequencies. But if I shorten up the decay, hear how the transient pops back out again? It's because the decay of the boom of the drum is ending right as the new transient hits, and they're not overlapping with each other and making the sound kind of muddy. So yeah, I'll do that again so you can hear. So this is shorter length so you can hear the transient, and listen how the transient, that snap at the beginning of the kick, listen how it disappears as I turn this up. Here it sounds like it's muffled, like it's coming through a pillow. And then when you shorten it back up again, all of a sudden you have a full kick again. So using the decay and the boom of the kick is a really good way to not have to worry about doing rumbles. And at the same time, I think it sounds better. So I like pairing kicks with subs more than I like to try to make a rumble. Again, because I can get these really super punchy, great sounding kicks, particularly with this module, right? Like they slam through. And then if I was to add in, you know, a sub like what we were listening to before, you know, or another option is I've got some toms. And that way you've got those kind of, you can still have that same kind of low end kind of funkiness that you get from a rumble, but without having to actually do the rumble. And so for me, I prefer this. And this is a great opportunity. I'm gonna go back through just a little bit about what we were doing at the beginning, but at a different tempo here. So building a track kind of from the bottom up now. The last time we did it, we started with kind of a melodic thing in the middle, and then we built around that. But if you're starting from the bottom up, you can do something like this, where you're starting with a kick with either a short decay or a long decay that can really kind of fill up your low end and make it sound super beefy, right? And then you can add things in. So, you know, adding in these toms. Another option is sometimes what I do is I will have a sample in the dig attack, so you can see this is sequenced. So this can act as a rumble, and this is actually a sample of the battering ram, so that I can then bring this in. Filter that up. And it gives that same effect like if you were running the kick through a delay, and then you have control over it as well. So then you can add things like reverb to this. You can add chorus, which sounds pretty cool. And then you can add delay if you choose. And then you have control again with filter. So you can get that same idea of a rumble by doing it with a sequencer. If you are going to do that, like for example, like what I was showing here, I like to use a sample of the exact same kick that I'm doing if I'm using a sample. So that way it sounds like it's that kick being processed rather than sounding like another instrument. If I'm not going to use it that way, I would rather not do that and use toms. So that can really fill in your low end like that. Then what I would generally do is something like bass itch, so we can bring in the one we were using before. And we have this pitch down a little. So now you can hear we've got low end from the kind of subby sounds that we had before and from the boom of that kick. Then we have those toms that are the next thing in the frequency spectrum. Then in kind of the low mids, we have something like this. Then if we want to go to, let's see, do something in kind of more in the high mids here. I'm just gonna mess around and do something weird. I don't know what this is gonna sound like, but hey, let's mess around. So I'll unmute that and then bring it in. Oh, that's why. That is 6, not 14. There we go. I'm just gonna try a random thing here. See what channel that's on. So again, this is a little higher than what I would normally do. So I would take something like this and I would probably pitch this one down. Maybe somewhere in here. So that's at that kind of next level up in the frequency range. Then maybe we want something that's not as tonal as this. So then I might bring in something like an atmosphere. And because the way I have this, here I can show you again here. So since this is on the launch control, I can bring in an atmosphere that's looping and I have control over pitch. So if I want this to be higher up in the spectrum, I can put it there. And I can kind of find that exact right spot where I want that. And then maybe the next thing up in the spectrum is going to be something in kind of like the higher end of the mids or the lower end of the highs. So for that, it's going to be something like an open hat. So it's not quite super high hi-hat range, but it's going to be a bit lower. So I'll take a filter down so it's not a crazy super high hi-hat. So that gives me that next band of frequencies. And then maybe I want to double that with a ride to get it even higher, right? The ride being a bit higher frequency. And we had adjusted this ride before, so I'm gonna make it sound like a ride again. And then maybe we want something even higher than that. So maybe a really high percussive thing. So we have some percussion stuff here, but it's not very high pitched. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pitch this up. So now you can see we've got every single layer all the way up of sound, starting from the very lowest sub through kick and bass, through lower end melodic stuff. Then we added in our atmosphere. They kind of took up that high mids. Then we went into different pitches of cymbals. So when you have something like this is why we can put all this together without having to worry about side chaining, without worrying about moving stuff out of the way of other stuff. Because if you think about it consciously, to put those things in their place, and it's one of the great things with the Electron boxes, by the way, is that not only do you have the regular filter, but you also have the bass width filter. So you can really shape the sound to fit very precisely into a range with these boxes, which is pretty awesome. So if you do find something overlapping and it's coming from one of these boxes, you can actually shape that and kind of take off the low or take off the high or whatever. So they're not competing with one another, right? So then once we have something going like this, then we can start adding in. So this is kind of a background. It's our groove. It can kind of keep everything moving along. But then if we want some things that are kind of melodic and interesting, kind of splashes of interest, that's where I like to use the Archer's rig, because that I can set whatever frequency band I want using the filter and the effects. So you hear right now it's coming as like a percussive element, but then if you open this, the decay up in this, then it becomes more of a prominent element. And again, you have all these different engines. So let's say we want to put this on one of like the bell tone things. So we can go in and make something new, because that was just us kind of screwing around before. And a little trick for when I perform live, because I'm writing stuff as I'm playing and I'm not pre-listening to things. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll pull down the decay all the way, and then I'll go in and I'll just figure out just like a rhythm that I want to do, kind of based on where it fits with the other instruments. So you can hear it's there already. But if I've got the decay way down, you don't really hear it as much. So you can hear it because you're listening for it, but the crowd doesn't necessarily hear it, right? So then you can go in and start to change up notes if you'd like. Right? So now we've got the same pattern but with some notes, but you can't really hear them, and the audience can't really hear them either. And now, if you want, when you start to bring up your decay, then all of a sudden it's like you're filtering it in, but it's not. You're just kind of opening up the sound. Right now you're only getting the transient because the decay is really short, but then if you open it back up, and then I'll put that through reverb. And then where it gets really fun is that's where I would start to put it through the Ghost, for example. And because you have a lot of dynamic control with the Archer's rig, you can then close things down. And if you want, you filter it up. It's like pitching it up. And what's fun sometimes here is that you can create a breakdown. So like using the riser and the meta, and then taking out your kick. You can bring up the riser. And that kind of adds in some reverb as it filters up. And then what I like to do is I like to open up the decay, because broader decay adds tension and it makes people kind of wonder what's going to come next. And then a lot of times I'll bring in my kick in the background, because since it's filtered up, you'll only hear the transient, and it gets everybody used to the idea that the kick's coming back in. Again, that builds a little more tension. And then what I'll do is when I bring back down the reverb and the filter to kind of settle back into a groove, I'll close down the decay again so it settles into a short percussive sound. And that kind of gets you back into that same groove again. So it's a great way using decay and using, you know, effects like reverb and filters and delays and stuff to build up kind of chaos and discomfort and tension to make something kind of build and sound like, something's coming, this is kind of crazy and everything's going nuts. And then you settle back into that kind of comfortable groove that you were at from the beginning. And then people will dance for a while to this and they'll enjoy the groove. They don't need to have a whole bunch of things happening. I don't need to be like changing quick and turn and make something else, a new effect and another effect. And it's not for this kind of music. For this kind of music, it's important that everybody has those moments to really kind of enjoy, to kind of settle in and groove with the music. But then in order for that to not get monotonous, that's when you interject things that add tension and then they go away, or you add tension and, you know, a decay and effect. And then again, as I mentioned before, one of my sends that's here is, check out my headphones. I knew that was going to happen. My battery was low on my headphones. So one of the things that's cool is having the first send here going through the Koslin. It's sending it through a frequency shifter and it's sending pre-fader so that when I send from the Koslin or send from this, the instrument doesn't even have to be up. The fader doesn't have to be up. So for example, I can send, we had those notes from the BIA from before, I'll just chuck a few more in there. So even without that being up, we can send that to the Koslin. And that creates a new sound. And we can frequency shift that. We can FM modulate it. So that's sending the BIA through there, but we can also send our Archer's rig through there and check out what this sounds like. So again, duplicating sounds, and then when we open the decay on the Archer's rig, we're also opening the decay on what's sending to the Koslin. And the Koslin can send to the Ghost as well. So you see how you can build all of those different frequencies all the way from lowest all the way up to highest, and then keep that as your kind of foundation, your main sound palette, and then you can bring in something like the Archer's rig over the top of it and have it be really pronounced. Now if it's not the Archer's rig, let's say we just use the Archer's rig as percussion. So this is a way that I would kind of transition to something new. I would say, okay, well, Archer's rig is percussive now. Then I may bring in a totally different instrument. Like we have, here, let me just add some melodic stuff to this bass line. And I can bring this in. right? So then you have another instrument that comes in and kind of takes the place of the archer's rig as the predominant sound that you're using. And what's cool with the send going through the Koslin is now I can stop sending from the archer's rig and I can start sending from the bass. That kind of took the place of that melodic element in the middle. So you can see how with building things up from frequency spectrum, rather than saying, okay, what's the bass, what's the lead, what's the counter melody, where's the harmonic thing, what's the percussion, the whatever. I don't tend to think about elements in that way. I like to think about individual elements in the frequency band that it fits into. So that way, maybe it's a percussive element, maybe it's a lead, maybe it's a vocal, maybe it's an atmosphere, but it needs to fit into that space. And so that way, the mix sounds really even. So that's why you don't need compressors on the end and limiters and a whole bunch of side chaining and all of that stuff. Something that we talk about a lot in my courses that I teach is that the reason you have to do those things is because you made a mess in the first place. So then you have to clean up the mess. And with this kind of method, you avoid making the mess in the first place. And so then you don't have anything that you have to clean up afterwards. So you can just kind of let it play the way it's supposed to play. So let's see, questions. Put those questions in the chat. We're almost done here, so I want to try to get to every question that we can. All right. Can't wait to hear what Maydon has to say. She's awesome. Yes, she is awesome. And she's super nice. I'm excited to have her on. She's got tons of knowledge and experience, and it will be very cool to chat with her in the podcast. All right, let's see. Okay, I intended it with my analog heat effects, Syntact, Digatone going into analog heat. And with my Digitact, I send MIDI that triggers whatever I need for sidechain. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you absolutely can. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or that you can't do that. I'm saying what I try to do personally in my rig is I try to not create an atmosphere where I need to sidechain things out of the way of the kick. I try to give the kick its own space by not piling anything on top of it. That's just kind of the easiest way to explain it. And that way I don't have to sidechain anything, because if you end up sidechaining everything, you're just going to end up with all of your music. If you sidechain your master away from your kick, all of your music is just going to go womp, 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 womp all the time. And you don't necessarily have any kind of flow and groove. And it also kind of kills a lot of the dynamic range if you're really compressing like that all the time. So I would say just be careful, like try to use compression as little as you can possibly do. And if you can get to the point where you use it where as little as you can equals 0, then I think you're in a good spot. Yeah. Let's see, what else? Hey, what's going on, EasyBot? Matthew is with us. There's a switch. I'm usually watching your streams and popping in and saying, hey. But hey, welcome. Good to have you. Pierre, let's see. I need those black panels. Yeah, I actually just got those just recently. These are from Mork Modular in Sweden. There's two companies. There's a company in the UK whose name escapes me, who's also doing black panels for the Shack modules. But these are the Mork Modular ones. that I just got just recently. I'm only missing a black panel for my Coslin. I still have to get that one sometime soon. What else? Yes, but I use Rumble 2.2 or 2.3 delay, so it comes like moving the kick. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do it that way. And that's generally the way that I do it when I produce, is I will take the kick and I'll affect it and make the rumble from the affected kick, because it's much easier to do it when you produce. The challenge in playing live is that those timings change anytime you change your tempo. If you change up your kick pattern, those timings will also be a little odd and they won't necessarily fit as well. And so for me, rumble, like if I'm gonna do a 4-4 rumble, so like a 4 on the floor kick, then it's easy for me to sequence that, and I'll sequence it with velocity in the dig attack. So it'll start off like on the 2, it's lowest velocity. On the 3, it's the highest, and on the 4, it's medium. And so you get this da 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 that gives you this kind of a bounce in the rumble, and that sounds cool. And so if I have a 4-4 kick, I can bring in the rumble, and it sounds really cool. If I want it to be groovy like it would be from an affected delay, I prefer to use other instruments, because then I have a lot more control over those instruments if I change things up. And sometimes it's really cool too when you have something like let's see here. So this kind of subby. I'm gonna change up that amp a little bit. Yeah. So if you have something like this, that's your pattern going against the kick, it'll sound one way when you have a 4-4. And it gives you kind of one type of bounce groove. But then if you switch this up to a breakbeat, but you leave the tom pattern or the bass, whatever you're using for it, you leave that the same, but you switch this to a breakbeat. So I haven't changed that up at all, but it gives it a totally new groove because I've switched up the kick. Whereas if you're using a delay, that delay will shift as soon as you shift the kick, and so it'll sound similar even if you change this to a breakbeat. And then you go back to something like this. And then if you add in some smaller like grace notes, but still keeping that kind of tom or bass or whatever that low end pattern is the same, it gives you a whole bunch of different diversity of groove with just changing a couple notes in the kick, because you've left that one the same. And on the flip side, you can do the same over here. So if you're on this track, I think you can see this, yeah. If you're on this track, you can change up where you've got those, and go in and change up the. So then you can change that up with your same kick pattern, right? So come in with a different tom pattern. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility and control over individual layers, which is pretty cool. Because now we've got a really cool kind of counter groove or rumble or sub or whatever you want to call that. But then if you change this up again, if you change this, you get a really cool sounding groove with that bass. And sometimes with these kind of breakbeat grooves like this, it sounds better when you have a hat. Right? And then you change back again too. do, low pass, filter this way, way down, and you just hear the kick and the rumble. So yeah, it gives you a lot of options to be able to control each individual layer. So that's one of the things I love about doing rumbles that way. So what else? Any questions? Let's see here. One last question. How many kicks should I use in a set? So, funny, I had this question on a one-on-one coaching call earlier today. So just to give you an example, I use one kick all the time, no matter what, in all my sets, but it's a really versatile kick, right? So let me just give you an example of how versatile this kick is. I'll just leave a hat there. So let's just do kick and hat so you can kind of hear what it sounds like. So with this same kick, and let's do breakbeat so it's a little bit more interesting. So I can make this aggressive. I can get into that kind of 808 territory. Right? Or I can tighten that up. I can add some drive. I can add transient and depth. I have a second drive circuit. Right? So that you've got all kinds of kicks that you can do from one kick. So when I get asked all the time, how many kicks should I have? The answer I usually give is one, if that kick is versatile. Whereas if you have a kick sample that sounds perfect, exactly the way you like it, and so you never modify the sound or it kind of messes it up, then you're gonna need one of those perfect kick samples for every single new idea, new track, new section of your performance. So you'll modify you'll modify what sample you're using. You'll change samples in order to have it match with whatever your current section is or your current track is that you're playing. Whereas with a kick like this, the reason why I have this and the reason why I have the samples that I have and things like that is because I only need one. I can change it up so that it becomes all of the things I want it to. So for example, if I was just starting off my set, one of my favorite ways to start my set is just with a really subtle kick, right? And have it just be something like this. Right? So it can be super mellow like this and kind of muffled, and it sounds like a heartbeat. It sounds like it's kind of getting started. And then we can, what did I have going on here? I'll take that one out. There we have 14. So you see that one kick can be super, super groovy and super mellow. Then if we go back over to our low end kind of subby tom things that we were using over here, and we want to bring those in, again, filter them way down. So again, one kick, one tom, one bass line. But now, this will be a little dramatic. This is way faster than I would normally do this, but you can turn this kick into something much more dramatic. we can take our tom, we can add some resonance and some envelope. And then we can start to filter up our bass. So all of this is still the exact same kick, the exact same tom, the exact same bass line. But because they're really flexible sounds, then you can go from being super mellow to much more aggressive. You know, then maybe we want to go to it. Bring in another sound. So now we've got something that's a little bit more energetic, a little bit more dancey, but if you wanted to just mellow this right back out again, we can take our lead sound here, take off some resonance, filter it down. Same thing with our tom stuff. Take even our ride, because this ride again is a really diverse sample, so it's really versatile. So you can take this and soften up the attack. And then filter it up. Then we can start to mellow out our kick again. Take the transient down. So all of that, in the amount of dynamics that there is in there, all of that is with the same sounds. I didn't change hats, I didn't change toms, I didn't change kicks, I didn't change bass lines, I didn't change leads. It's just a matter of being able to shape and sculpt and get more dynamics out of each individual sound, rather than saying, how many of those sounds do we need? How many kicks do we need? Well, like I said, you only need one if it's really versatile. If it's not, if it's a specific thing for a specific sound, then you're going to need one for each type of sound that you want to do. So I can't answer it for you. I wish I could, but it comes down to really how you're structuring your music. So want to make sure that you have what you need. And for me, I have what I need through versatility of individual things. Whereas if I didn't have things that were this versatile, I would need different samples, different synths, different modules, whatever, to be able to do the same thing. So having versatility is key. What else? Any other questions anyone has out in the YouTube YouTube chat universe here. Let's see. All right, there are a bunch more here. All right. Hey, from Portland, Oregon. Awesome. I'm trying to get out to Portland again. Actually, I'm talking with a promoter out there. I'm going to try to get out there to play soon. Let's see. Digitone has so much mid content. Yeah, sure. I mean, it can, or you can just change the shape. You know, you can really change the thing with the digitone that I found is that it's really easy to sculpt the sounds. So sure, maybe it has mid, but it doesn't have to. You can take that mid out of it pretty easily without EQing, just by changing up the sound itself. So yeah, I mean, if you don't have an EQ, what you can do is you can, if you want to take out mid, you can add high, meaning that you can either put resonance on a low pass filter and then envelope up so you get a higher peak, so it increases the high of that sound. And then the same thing you can do with the low end. So you can kind of make up for not having mid, you just boost or bring down the sound and boost up those ends. Or you can EQ. The problem with me is that in a live performance, there's just no way to EQ things. It's just not possible. I'm not carrying a 40-pound DJ mixer with me and then trying to figure out which of so I've got 32 tracks between these two devices. I've got another 16 here, so that gets me to 48. And then I have another 6 voices in here, so that gets me to 54 voices. So if I have a 4-channel DJ mixer, what do I EQ? So that's where I end up, like, it's a never-ending battle, and it's futile to even try to do it. So I would much rather sculpt sounds than try to create a mess and then try to fix it with EQ or compression or whatever, because in a live setup, there's just not a way to do it. There's not a good way, at least, to do it to the level that you would want to. So it becomes this kind of never-ending cycle of trying to make it work, and it's just almost impossible. So let's see here. When using the Oxy with the electrons, do you sequence the digis from themselves or from the Oxy, or both? Both. So before I got the Digitone 2, I was using just the Digitact, and I was channels 1 through 8 were sequenced internally. Those were all drum tracks, and then 9 through 16 were all synth, like melodic one-shots, and I was sequencing those from the Oxy. Now I'm sequencing all 16 of the tracks of the Digitone from the Oxy. So I have Sequencer 2 is an 8-track multi that's channels 1 through 8. Sequencer 3 is an 8-track multi that's channels 9 through 16. So anything, basically for me, the rule of thumb is that anything that's melodic, I sequence from the Oxy, just because it's so much better at sequencing melodic things and improvising and random generation of notes in key and all of that stuff. With the electrons, if you want to do things in key, you can, but you have to do it note by note, and you're turning the encoders and dialing it in every single note. Whereas with here, I can just go into the random generator and I can generate pitch. So all I have to do is, so for example, for this track, take out everything else. This one that we were doing before. So that's this track right here. So right now, it's all on one note, right? But if I want to, I can just go, if I go to that channel and I go to the random generation to pitch, I can hit this within the parameters that I set out here, and it will generate random pitch in key, but keep the gate pattern the same. So it doesn't randomly generate new notes and a new pattern. So if I like this pattern, for example, I can just hit this. I can do it again. You know, I can give it a broader range if I want the notes to jump farther. So this is plus or minus 4%. So being able to do that quickly, if I wanted to try to do that in there, the equivalent would be go there, change the note, go there, change the note, go there, change the note, and I can't do it randomly. So when I'm performing live, I like to do a lot of random generation, but I don't want to generate random pattern. I want to keep the same kind of groove that I like, and I want to write those manually because I know just where those go in a sequence where I like it. And so I like to be able to do stuff like this, and then I can just generate. And if you want it to go really crazy, let's make it go much broader. And if you don't like it, you can always undo and go back to where you were before. And then you can generate new ones. So you can use this. So you can use this one and then go back. Or you can really easily just go back down to 0%, and then it puts it all back to one note again. So those are all things that you can't do inside the Electron with the sequencer there. So that's why for me, anytime it's melodic, whether it's like a one-shot sample that's melodic, or whether it's a synth like it is with the Digitone, if it's a melodic voice, it's being sequenced from the Oxy. Or if it's in the modular, it's being sequenced from the Oxy, because this sends out CV, so it's much easier to do, and I don't have to have like MIDI to CV conversion and all that stuff. So yeah, so I'm using both in order to get the sounds I want. So you think it would be better to try and put out an EP and get on a record label before trying to play live? Seems like no one would even give you a show till you get a following. Yeah, I mean, so there's it's funny because this is a whole section in my hybrid production course that I do online, is about like why to produce and when to produce and all of that stuff. Because, you know, sometimes, basically in this day and age, there is no money in music, like as far as like selling music, like writing tracks and selling them even on Bandcamp or wherever. You'll never make any money. So in my opinion, more often than not, the best use of production is to use as a marketing tool for your performances. So because you're much more likely to get paid for a performance than you are to get paid for production in this day and age. So yes, producing can be a great way to get yourself out there and get reach out there. Now the pitfall for me, and this was a dilemma for me over the last couple of years, the pitfall with producing and performing live is that it depends on how you're going to perform live. Are you going to perform live and produce the tracks, and perform the tracks that you produced? So you're going to pre-prepare everything, and you're going to basically DJ with hardware so that you can play the things that you produced. If that's the case, producing is a great idea, because then when they like your music and it gets you out there and you get a following based on the productions, they're going to be happy when you perform that same way, that same style, or those same tracks that they liked. So they'll go together, and it'll be, one will complement the other. For me, I have taken a break for the last 3 years from producing. I've been producing for like more than 20 years, and I took a break these last 3 years as I really focused everything on performing live with hardware. And now in 2025, I have a whole bunch of releases that I'm going to be putting out this year. And the reason is that I wanted to make sure I could not only dial in my sound live so that my productions would sound similar, but also I wanted to be able to dial in my production workflow, which is what I teach in my hybrid course, so that I'm actually producing from live performance. So that way it sounds like what you're going to see live. So that's one part of it, is that, you know, they need to go together in one way or the other. So either produce and then perform what you produced, or perform and record, you know, even if it's multi-track and you go back in and fix things or whatever, record what you perform so that your productions sound like your live performances either way. And that way they kind of work together. Now, the other thing about when to produce and why to produce and put things out is that you mentioned something in your thing about you won't get a gig if you don't have a following. I agree with you. However, you also won't get your music noticed without a following. So it's not that producing will get you a following. Any more than performing will get you a following. And the reason why I say that is because there was a statistic recently. They said Spotify, and I know that Beatport had a similar statistic a couple years ago. They said, if I'm not mistaken, it's 1 million. No, is it 1 million? No, it's 100,000. 100,000 tracks per day are released. So basically almost 1 million tracks a week. So like 700,000 tracks a week, give or take. So let's call it 1 million. So that means there's 52 million tracks a year being released. The odds that yours will break through are less than slim. I wouldn't say they're none, but it's not zero, but it's close to zero. So you hit on the key, which I think the key is following, getting a following, developing a group of people who are interested in what you're doing and who will support when you perform, who will support when you release tracks, who will do that stuff. So the following really in this day and age is key. Now that following can be like, I have a following here on YouTube. Some people build up followings on Instagram or on TikTok or on whatever. Social media is kind of the easiest place to build up a following. Building up a following by releasing music is a real challenge. Like it's breaking through all of that noise is even more difficult than breaking through the noise on social media. So I would hesitate to say producing is the path to getting gigs. I will say that it can, getting yourself out there, producing, performing, going to events, getting to know promoters, networking with people, all of that stuff is the best way to get gigs. Producing and making music is one element of that. But I think, like, for example, one of my favorite artists, techno, kind of this kind of deeper, groovier techno that I like to do. One of my favorite artists in this whole realm is a guy called Maron, Marron. He lives in the Netherlands, and he is blowing up globally. He's playing huge festivals now. He's touring all over the world now, and he has never produced a track ever. And so he built up a following by doing events, DJing events, playing a lot of parties, going to the next event, playing parties, going to the next event, and kind of building up his reputation as a DJ without any production at all. So he puts out a lot of mixes. He puts out a lot of mixes on SoundCloud and Mixcloud and stuff like that. So he's built up a following of subscribers there, and that's really helped him. So again, you don't have to produce. I think a lot of DJs feel like they have to produce, and I think live performers, it comes the same way. I would say producing is great, and if it's something you love to do, you should do it. But I wouldn't say that it's a ticket to gigs as a DJ or a live performer. It's just not. It's the reality. I mean, I can tell you this as somebody who has DJed for 30 years and produced for more than 20. In this day and age, in the modern age, getting your tracks discovered is incredibly difficult. Breaking through the noise as a new artist. So building up a following is great, because then if you build up a following, your following will purchase your productions that you put out, and they'll come see your shows. And then your productions may chart, they may get noticed by promoters, and then that can get you gigs for sure. But breaking through that noise without a following is a real challenge. So producing won't necessarily get you a following that will get you gigs, but getting a following is important for getting gigs, if that makes sense. So long answer to a short question. Let's see. Since everything has its place, and so not cleaning up the mess, are you using EQs on the mixer? No, I have no EQs anywhere in my system at all. No. the way that I'm putting things in their place sonically is through sound selection and through sound design. Which is much more of a challenge in modular than it is in the hardware boxes. So one of the things that's so, there's a lot of things that are really great about these Electron boxes, but one of the things that's so amazing is if I go into this sound that we were just doing right here, I have this filter that's kind of performative, and it's the way that I can kind of open and close things and put LFOs and make it sound like it's moving. But if I hit the filter button again, I have this filter, which is a bass width filter. So this is really for cleaning up frequencies. So that means on the 32 tracks between these two devices, every single one of them has 2 filters. So on each one of them, I have a filter that's designed to sculpt sound and a filter that's designed for performance on each track. So that makes these really super powerful for exactly what we're talking about, because you can really sculpt the sound exactly the way you want. You can take off lows, take off highs, keep only the piece of the sound that makes it unique, that makes it the sound that it is. And that way you don't have any kind of wasted frequencies that are muddying up your mix or stepping on top of other things that you then have to EQ out of place. So that's one reason why I use these for so many voices within my setup, because it's much more difficult to do that kind of stuff with modular. You can with filters, but it's much, much more difficult. And if you wanted to have an EQ per voice, I mean, I have 5 voices in this little case, so to have an EQ per voice would be a nightmare. And then you add in effects, and then you would have to EQ post effect as well, which is just a nightmare. So I prefer to not even go down that road. Yeah, so let's see what's next. I love it. Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you. And actually my label is based on something I do from the beginning, and you put it towards, I make stuff and I capture. Yeah, I think that for live performers, that's kind of the way to go, because at least for improvised performers, because it's a great way to put out productions that are representative of your sound when you perform, without having to sacrifice that improvised nature, if that makes sense. If you make things in the box, you have to then translate that to performance. So you'll see a lot of performers out there who are producers first, and they will produce something, break it into stems, bounce those stems to audio, and then load them into an octatrack and reassemble them in front of the crowd. So you're not really playing live, you're reassembling a broke apart production, where and often they'll leave 1 or 2 tracks within that for improvisation, and they'll have instruments that they can play to improvise in those areas. So it's a real blend of kind of DJing and improvising at the same time. So that's one way to do it, but it gets really complicated, because then you have to figure out how you're transitioning from song to song, and then it becomes more like DJing, and you don't really have a lot of that control, but you do have a lot of consistency. So again, it's all there's a lot of different choices to make in this. And so I would say it's really up to you the way you want to do it. But I feel like, for me personally, because my sets are improvised, it's important for me to make my productions come from improvised performance, because that way there's an authenticity in what you hear in the music, the production, and it sounds like what you're getting when you come to a live show, if that makes sense. But it won't be the exact same song, but it'll still have my sound, because without that, one's done in a computer and one's done in a live rig, so they're not going to have the same sound, even if it's the same person making them, right? So yeah. Let's see, what else? So versatile. Yeah, thanks. Use it for white noise in the D-tact, for crispy hats. Don't do too much samples or loops. Yeah, I don't really either. I mean, I'd use samples for individual hits that I use in the D-tact. Particularly, I like hat samples, because I'm a big fan of like 909 hats. So I'll use a 909 hat sample rather than trying to make a hat. For me, particularly for the music that I make, there's a certain familiarity with 909 hats that people, when they hear them, it gives them a good feeling, because they know that sound and they like it. So I don't feel like I have to reinvent the wheel and make everything unique. Certain foundational elements like that, like a 909 kick, 909 hat, I think they sound great. 909 claps are great too. But then having the ability to sound design other stuff, I think is important. So that's why I use those for samples. And then it's why I'm actually thinking about taking the Digitact out of my live setup and just using the Digitone, because with this, I can still do hats, right? But I have to make them, and then they're synthesized, so they don't quite sound exactly the same, but I can do them that way. I like the sound of the 909 more, and I don't want to have a whole 909 just to have hats. So yeah, I'm having a dilemma right now. And then the only other samples I use are what's in the black box, and these are all just loops. As I mentioned before, I have sub loops, which is things like that. I have atmosphere loops, which is like that. I have a few percussion, which are recorded from my studio modular. And then I have a couple of vocal loops and things like that. So that's pretty much it that's in there. Anything else is kind of being made live in the moment. Let's see here. Do you start from scratch the sequencing part in your live performance? Yes, I do. So my method, I went through this a little before, but I'm happy to chat again. My method is, if I was going to a show right now, I would pack up all my gear just like it is, and I would set it up at the show. And I have some things in my sequencer from just today that we've been messing around. So when I go to do my sound check will use whatever is in my gear. And then as soon as I get to the end of my sound check, I do this and this and this, and that's how I start. So then when I go up to perform, everything's blank and it's clean slate, and I go up to be able to begin from scratch. The only thing that I don't delete is the sounds that I have. So for example, obviously in the modular, the sounds are the sounds, right? You can't delete a module. It's gonna sound the way it's gonna sound, whatever you do with it. And then within the electron boxes, I keep the sounds like whatever was there again at the end. I don't really have it preset. So however, like if I went to play a show again right now, whatever we've been messing around with in here is where I would start the show. And then I would just kind of move on from there, rather than say, okay, it has to be this, it has to be this, and dialing it all in. The only exception of that is with my drums and percussion elements that are here in the Digitact. I like to have those because they're foundational and they're always kind of the same. So like track 5 on this is always going to be a closed hat. 6 is always going to be an open hat. 7's always going to be a ride, right? 8's always going to be a tom. 3 and 4 are always percussion of one form or another. 2 is always a clap or snare. And 1 is a kick or a rumble in this case. So those all stay the same. And when I say the same, it means that, 5 is always a closed hat. It's not always the same closed hat, but it's always a closed hat. 6 is always an open hat, but it's not always the same open hat. Well, in my case, it generally is. It's usually a 909, but it doesn't have to be. So the percussive elements, those are all different on any time I open up a new project or kit or whatever. But as I mentioned earlier, like if you look, let me see, I'll go into the project. So if you look, actually, here, let me take this off so you can see. So this is my project page in my Digitact. And if you look, there's one project on project slot 1. And everything else all the way down is totally empty because I don't change projects. I don't do something new each time. I evolve things over time rather than creating something new. Same thing in the Digitone. So if we go in here and we go into the project management, there's 2. One is the presets because it's still pretty new. I haven't deleted those out yet. And then the other one is my project, Circo 1. That's it, right? So yes, I delete everything out and I constantly evolve my sounds so that it's kind of never the same twice and there's nothing pre-prepared at all. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question. James, what's going on? Happy New Year. James, let's see. Happy accidents, yes. I love happy accidents. The maestro of improv. Thanks. I'm gonna start. It's gonna be the slogan on my marketing stuff. The maestro of improv. It's funny. Let's see. What's the overlap between Syntact and Digatone 2? Before Digatone 2, I really wanted a Syntact, but now unsure. So, funny story. So when I first was kind of putting together my live stuff a few years ago, and before I got into modular and I was just using hardware boxes, I was using the Digitact 1, Digatone 1, and a couple of other things. I had a quadranted swarm, which I still have, and a few other things. Black box were in my setup. Then, as soon as the Syntact came out, so I was using the Digatone because in one box, I could have 4 synths, 4 complete synth voices in just one box. So instead of bringing 4 separate synths with me, I could just have them all in one. So for me, that was amazing. As soon as the Syntact came out with 12 synths, I sold my Digatone. And I switched over and I had the Syntact in my live setup. And I was using that as basically 12 monosynths, and it was set up exactly the same way. I started sequencing it from the Oxy, and I was using it exactly the same way. Then the Digatone 2 came out, and as soon as this came out, I sold my Syntact because I love the sequencing power of this. I love all the new engines that they put in this. I love the fact that it's now 16 synths in one box, which is mind-blowing. I love, so the new engines, the wavetable and the traditional digital engines sound really good, along with the FM. I like the new FM drum, because I do a lot of like tonal percussive, and so I love to have that. I love to have that tonal percussive, easy to get to. And with the FM drum, it's basically the same as the same FM engine. It's just with different controls. And the controls are really designed for percussive sounds. And so it's really quick to dial in sounds. So I really love that. And then my favorite feature of this, which I don't think gets enough love, is the sound layering. So here, let me show you really quick. So let's go to our 14 track here. And let's just put in a couple of notes. Oh, that's 6. I'm on the wrong sequencer. So now if we go into here, I'm going to take the effects off so you can kind of hear it a little bit better. So that's track 14 that's playing this. So now, if I go into the setup mode, setup mode, and I go down to track layering and hit yes, you have all 16 tracks here, and you'll see that track 14 is like an X. So that means that's your track that's being sequenced. And the same is the case if you're sequencing internally. I'm sequencing externally, it doesn't really matter either way, this works the same. So this is the pattern that's going into track 14, and that's why it's this. Now, what I can do is I can select any combination of the other 15 tracks, and they will be layered, meaning they will be controlled by this same sequence, even though they're a totally different sound. So let's try. So I'm going to turn this one down just a little bit. So you can see it's now this one pattern is controlling those two, right? Now, if I go back into setup again and go to my track layering, so now it's 2 voices, but let's say I add in a whole bunch more. So now those are all being controlled by the same sequence. So now, if I go back and I change this sequence, now I'm changing that one sequence and it's changing all of these voices. Now I can deselect them. So one sequence can control multiple voices. So what this means now, in effect, is that all of those voices become one layered sound within this like world of this sequence, right? So one sequence has now a 4-layer sound, which is actually 4 different synth voices. So each one of these layers now when I go back into each one of those layers, so I think we had 4, 5, and 15, and 14. So now each one of those layers has 3 LFOs, 2 filters. It has bit reduction, overdrive, sample rate reduction, delay, reverb, chorus per sound, per layer. So that means if you have 4 layers and you have 3 LFOs per track, per channel, per layer, that means that you have 12 LFOs in that one sound that you can then use to modulate all sorts of different things. You also have, between those 4, you have 2 filters per track. So you have 8 filters to be able to sculpt sound. You have all those different effects. You can set different delay timings per layer of your sound. You can set different amounts of reverb per layer of your sound. You can set, differing amounts of everything that you can control with that per sound. So that gives you a crazy amount of sound design possibility and also a huge amount of flexibility. So now let's go back to what we were doing here. If I go, so I'm going to go back into my track layering thing again. Oops. So we've got 5, 6, 14, and 15 are all layered together. So if I play this, I can leave it on this channel right here, and I actually have control over muting and unmuting layers as well. I can assign or unassign those layers, right? So I can, so that's the original, or this, or those. So you can combine those together. Now, you need to do that from this page if you're sequencing externally. However, if you're sequencing internally, so I'm going to mute this, and we're going to go into track 14, and we're just going to do a random little sequence here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I need to be in record mode. So in track 14, so we can just do like a random sequence here, and that's in 14. So if I hit play on this, oops, then I have to go in and unmute 14. So that's the pattern that we just did. So now if we go in here and we go to our track layering again, right? 14 is by itself, but let's add in those same sounds that we had before, right? And then go back out of there. Now, if we go in and we unmute 14, 14 sequencer is controlling 14. But if I unmute 5, actually it looks like 5 has a sequence on it. So yeah, I'm going to take those off. And then I'm also going to go to 6 and take the sequence off there. So none of these other tracks will have sequences on them. Okay. So now if we go back to track 14, now we have 14, 5, 6, and 15 all layered together, but 14 is the only one playing right now. So if I unmute 6, now that pattern is controlling 14 and 6. So now, again, you still have that same control over every single layer, but now you also have the control over which ones you mute. But if you mute 14, even if the other ones are unmuted, you've muted the sequence. So now the sequence isn't controlling those until you bring it back in, right? So this gives you a wild amount of control, like to be able to sound design, come up with new things, multiple layers, and do that. So in a nutshell, that's exactly why I sold the Syntact as soon as this came out, because the Syntact for me was 12 monosynths, and this is 16 monosynths, or it is any combination of those 16 into multi-layered sounds. So let's say you wanted each kit, for example, or each pattern to have only 4 sounds like the original Digatone. Now each one of those 4 sounds can have 4 layers with 16 filters. No, sorry, with 12 LFOs, with 8 filters, with all the different effects by layer. So again, this thing is a monster, and that track layering piece is the thing that makes it a monster. I mean, it's the thing that's really unique, is having something that can track layer like that, but with this many tracks. And they can be, every one of those tracks can be a different engine. So you can have one be an FM drum, another be an FM engine, another one be a wavetable, another one be, and it doesn't matter. You can mix and match those as you want. So you can make these crazy complex layered sounds by doing that. And then when you control it externally, it just makes it that much more fun, because then you can mix and match with things over here. You can do the random generation of melodies and have it control multiple voices at the same time. So it's just a crazy powerful thing. So anyway, that's my Syntakt versus Digatone 2 speech. And I have to tell you, I was not a fan of Digatone 1, and I was a huge fan of Syntakt. And I still am a huge fan of Syntakt. I just think that if I have to have one in my setup, it's going to be the Digatone 2. And just because this does things, this has so much more power than any of the other machines, it's bonkers. Anyway, what else? How much do you experiment with or thought about tossing the Digitakt? Oh, well, oh yeah, there you go. Well, you just answered that. So I've thought about it. I have to say, I'm not going to toss it. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm not going to sell it. I still love it. It's still probably my favorite Electron box. But for my live performance rig, it has become a little bit obsolete, because anything that's a longer sample that I'm time stretching, I'm doing in the black box because it does it better than the Digitakt. And then anything that's going to be melodic, I'll do with the Digatone. And one of the reasons why it was in my setup for so long was the ability to have drums in it, full drums, including kicks. But now that I have the battering ram, I'm not using that kick. I've got some great voices like the Archer's Rig and the BIA that are really good for percussive sounds in here. So that kind of eliminates those needs. So really all the Digitakt is doing right now is claps and cymbals. That's the only kind of important role it plays. And I can move most of that over the Digatone. Like the cymbals I can move over here, which I have more or less already kind of moved some of those over. Claps are another world, because you know, claps sound weird with FM synthesis. It's hard to make them sound like a clap. You can, but I'm not super good at it. So it's going to take me some more practice to dial that in. But once I can get those sounds where I want them in the Digatone, then I'll stop traveling with the Digitakt. I just don't need to bring the extra box, because it's not doing anything that I don't have already taken care of in something else. So let's see, Deep Dish Coffee, would you consider recreating a track from a bunch of stems and tweaking a few synths live, still live performance, versus doing it live from scratch? Absolutely. Live is live. I mean, if you're doing something in the moment, you're playing live. But the thing is, there's different shades of live. You know, this came out just really recently. I don't know if you guys saw, I'm sure you probably did, because you can't get away from it right now, but the videos online of the Animas event at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And there's a whole bunch of videos online over the last couple days about, like, oh my God, this mind-blowing live rig that he has that he's playing on, and what amazing technology, and mind-blowing, and who could come up with something so crazy like this? Well, if you look at what it is a giant plexiglass box with lights inside it. And then mounted underneath and on top, he has a computer screen running Ableton, which is running all of his tracks as stems. And he has individual tracks that he can play, that he can improvise bits of. And on the sides of the Ableton, he has 2 Novation Launchpad minis. And so he's using those, which means that he can make Ableton quantized to key, so he can't hit a wrong note. He's playing a predetermined track, which I understand 100% he has to in order to sync with the crazy visuals. So it has to be a pre-prepared set. And then he's got a few things that he can twiddle with as far as using the pads. And then he has a bunch of knobs that are just these like ornamental knobs that are, each one of them is, if you look in the videos, it says, reverb, delay, filter, things like that. So those are just basically MIDI controller knobs that are controlling effects in Ableton. So he's running Ableton. The entire show is running on Ableton with stems. He's improvising a few things over the top of it, and he's got a bunch of big knobs that look dramatic that are just basically MIDI controller knobs, like any MIDI controller, to control sounds in Ableton. So that, for me, is absolutely live. It is absolutely, he is playing live. The thing that has been making me giggle a little bit is that this isn't anything revolutionary that he's doing. Ableton Live has been able to play live sets using MIDI controllers for 20 years. So that's not anything new. The only thing new is that he put those MIDI controllers in a giant plexiglass box and put a bunch of lights on it that look super cool, and it makes it into a cool looking show. But the actual technology that he's using is very basic. Like those Launchpad Minis are like $150. So he's got 2 of them on each controller. So that's $600 worth of gear, plus Ableton, plus some knobs of MIDI. So I guarantee you, he has more invested in that setup in plexiglass, hardware, and LED lights than he does in the actual music gear. So it's not a crazy technological masterpiece. It's just a normal Ableton Live with MIDI controllers, but it looks cool. And I'm not being negative on him at all, because to do a show like what he's doing and have it be synced with the wild amount of visuals that he has, it has to be a pre-prepared show. There's not any way, like the timing has to be to the second so that it coordinates with every visual. So your entire performance has to be synced with the visual computers so that they're doing that at the exact same time. So I get it. I get why he's doing that. Just know that it is not anything revolutionary that he's playing. So he's doing exactly what you said. Yes, it is playing live. He is performing live. He's playing bits and pieces of every single track. He's filtering, he's doing effects, he's doing that stuff. But he's playing live along with a predetermined set. So it's kind of like a singer-songwriter performing live with backing tracks. That's kind of the way I would equate it. So yes, it is absolutely still live. But I think there's just different shades of live. I think that, some things are live 100% from scratch. And for me, I would say like that's a band is playing live 100% from scratch. Like there's no way to save sounds. There's no way to save presets. There's no way to do any of that stuff. You just have to play. So that's one thing. But then there's all different shades in between. So yes, I would say stems and tweaking is still a live performance. And I would just say improvised live performance is just a different thing. Like if you take someone like, I don't know, you take an amazing guitarist who is playing something, take a classical guitar player, or have you ever heard of Rodrigo and Gabriela? Have you ever seen them play? They're fantastic Spanish guitar players. So they're playing songs that are completely rehearsed. They're playing the same every single time that they play. And they are some of the best guitar players in the world. Then you take somebody like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix, they're improvising along with songs. They're still playing with a band. They're still playing kind of certain keys and changing at certain times, but they're improvising lots of solos throughout. Prince was really good at improvising solos on guitar. So it's just a different type of performance. And for me, it's not that one's better than the other or one's like more legit than the other. It's just they're different. They're different types of performance. And I always hope that the audience is discerning enough to appreciate the differences and appreciate what one skill set is and appreciate what another skill set is. And they're both valid. They're both really important, but they're not the same. And so I just think that, yes, that is performing live, but it's just a different type of performing live. Let's see, do you feel like you sacrifice melodies and structure sometimes for improv? I know you're typically doing techno, but what if you want more melody, chord structure, and less noise? I mean, noise? I know what you mean by noise, but I get what you mean as far as melody and chord structure and stuff. That's just not the style that I'm playing. So I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything because, you know, if I wanted to play melodic techno, I would play melodic techno, but that's not what I'm playing. I'm, you know, this kind of hypnotic, deeper version is just a different sound. And so no, I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything. But that's like saying, do you feel like you're sacrificing melody if you're not playing jazz but you're playing rock? No, it's just a different thing. And as far as noise goes, that term to me is like, noise is noise. It's like every single sound we make is noise. The sound of an amazing grand piano is noise, just like a noise generating oscillator is noise. So it's all noise. And I think it's just a matter of how you harness that and how you play it and what's important for you. I can play melodic stuff, and I do sometimes, but it's not what's fun for me. For me, that feels too limiting. That idea that I would stick to a certain structure. I prefer to have the freedom to be able to kind of move where the creative and artistic inspiration takes me, rather than saying, you know, I'm gonna make sure I key change and this key changes to this key and then this goes with this and that the structure stays the same. That for me is just a different type of music that I'm not as interested in playing live. Now, as far as production goes, I produced house music for years and produced all sorts of techno and lots of stuff that's very melodic, and it's just not what I'm into right now, and it's not what I like playing live. So yeah, so I don't sacrifice because this is very intentional. This isn't, you know, oh, I wish I had something more melodic. Right? That thought never enters my mind. So let's see, what else? Have you decided to stay one genre? I mean, yes and no. I mean, I do a lot of genres when I'm messing around, when I'm, you know, practicing or just playing music, or when I'm producing. I do a lot of different things. But as far as my performances go, yes, I prefer to stick to a certain sound. I don't think it's necessarily one genre, because I think that where it would kind of loosely fit into this kind of hypnotic techno world, it's not exactly that. So I feel like I have my own sound, and it's kind of in between things, but I want to stick to that sound. I don't find any added validity to what I'm doing by being like, okay, well, now I'm going to do one drum and bass song, and then one, you know, EDM song, and then one, you know, kind of down tempo, and then one hip hop, and then one trap, and then one techno, and then whatever. It's like, cool if that's what you want to do, but for me, for my personal performances, and particularly the places that I play, that would lack coherence. And when somebody's booking me to play an event, they're booking for a specific sound. They're not booking a radio DJ who's going to come in and play, you know, 15 different genres in an hour. They're booking somebody who's going to add a certain vibe to a certain part of their event that fits in with the vibes that are being done by the other artists at different points during the event. So for that, yeah, I stick to a sound because it's what I like, because it's what I choose to play. Not that I can't play other things, it's just I don't feel like it. I've done a lot of other things, and this is kind of what I'm into now. Let's see, what's up? Wow, chapeau. Cool way to go. In improv, I switch between patterns and searching for sweet spots and surprises. I set analog rhythm, octatrack, MF. And diatone. What is MF? Try to think. Mini Freak, Micro Freak, one of those, I'm assuming. Yeah, I mean that's a whole other way to play, which I think is really cool. There's a lot of times where, specifically with hardware, where you can do like you can have patterns that are mix and match, and then you can kind of make those into things, which is really fun. I do a little bit of that with the things that I have in the black box, and then a few drum patterns, but mostly I'm writing in the moment. But there is some kind of mix and match, and I definitely appreciate that. Like I love having all of these things inside my black box that I can just go to whenever I feel like it. It makes it a lot of fun. So here, let me see if I can start these all up. Yeah, so to be able to just like go in and do a vocal thing,
Focus.
I think that's fun. Or to just be able to go in and do a certain atmosphere and just bring it up and have it be there. I think that's fun. So these are like mix and match bits. So yeah, I love that too. It's a really fun way to do it. Octatrack is really great for that too. If you have things like, for example, that you record from a modular or from your productions and you break it up into stems and load that into the different tracks in the Octatrack, it's great because then you can have individual track effects and you can have master effects and you can have looping and you can do, loop in different recording buffers, and so it's really fun within the Octatrack to do stuff like that with patterns and stems. Let's see. I think we had that long discussion at KnobCon. Yeah, maybe. Just wondering where your head's at now. Yeah, I mean it's still in the same place. I mean I'm doing what I'm doing because I really enjoy it, not really for any other reason. It's just because this is what I love to do. Still taking the analog heat for live. Yes, it is. You can't see it, but it is right here. It's up in the top, out of sight of the camera because there's just less stuff going on in it. Generally when I do these live streams, so I don't put it there. But yeah, I still take the analog heat plus effects and I use that. So my everything on the table comes through the BoardBrain Exelon mixer in one form or another. It all gets in here in one way. And then the master from that is these two red cables, and these go out to the analog heat plus effects, and then that goes out to the main. So out to the house if I'm playing a show, or right now it's going into my mixer so that you guys can hear it. But yeah, that's I still use that for sure. Let's see, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to do jazz melodic stuff while being improv with modular. Yeah, I mean that, like, you probably heard me say before, I think that techno is the jazz of electronic music because there's not really any rules. You don't have to, I mean, there's a lot of jazz that is not melodic. There's a lot of jazz that is atonal or unusual scales or things. So it doesn't necessarily fit into your kind of traditional melodic scales. And so I think with modular in particular, it's cool to do it that way. Now, it's very easy to do that if you want to. And that's either get a sequencer like this where you can put everything in key and you can make sure it stays in key, and then make sure your oscillators are tuned, and then you can write whatever melodies you want and they're all going to go together. And then when you change key on here, you can set up the oxy so that that three of the sequencers can follow one of the other ones. So if you change key in one sequencer, all the other ones will quantize to the notes in the new scale, and then send those out, whatever they are. So if you write a melody in one and a bass line in the other, and then you change the chords in your melody, it'll quantize your bass line to the nearest notes that fit that scale and still keep playing your bass. So everything will stay in key all the time. So it's very easy to do with the Oxy. It's also easy to do in modular if you use quantizers. So like I have an ADAC, I think it's called the intuitive quantizer. So you can set that up with multiple tracks and have them all be playing the same key and then send that out into your modular in different ways. So there's definitely ways to do it. It's not that it's all that complicated. It's just I choose not to do it because it's not the type of music I'm making. But yeah, it's totally doable. There's a lot of gear that's made specifically for that. Let's see. I feel your sound is under the realm of techno. It can be hard hypnotic, but amazingly the the fit in one set. It feels one track. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I go for. Is I want it. It goes back to my DJing days. I want it to sound coherent, that everything goes together, that it's smooth, that you don't really notice when you're going from one idea to another. So it is, for me, I want it to sound like one continual track that kind of is the soundtrack to your party that you're at. That's the mentality that I have when I do it. And yeah, it all sticks kind of within the techno range, but it kind of can go from super deep and atmospheric to like super driving and acidy to, you know, really super banging. It just kind of depends. It's kind of all over the place, but still within that kind of realm of techno. Let's see. Do you have this set up at Modular Rig? If yes, how to find? Oh, Modular Grid. Yes, it is on Modular Grid. Just search Circo, and you'll find it. I think actually both of my cases are on there. So like my current performance case as well as my studio case, which here I didn't show you guys, but other camera view. This is my studio modular, and then this is my hardware setup. So you're looking down on this part, but all this is off camera, and there's actually more to it. Like I can turn it, you can see there's a bunch more here. So that's the studio modular. Oops. Now my camera doesn't want to stay in place. One here. Yeah, so that's the studio modular. And so this is basically modules that that don't really lend themselves to live performance as well as what I have in the case. Like for example, I have the Odessa here, which I really love the sound of. I have the DPO, which I really love the sound of, but it takes a long time to dial those in to get the sound that you want to get. And so I don't tend to keep those in my live case because either they're big or they take forever to dial in, so they don't really fit in the live case. So they're still there. They're just not in this. So let's see what is next. James, Central Sequencer makes improv production a ton easier. It does. I mean, I have to say when I stopped, I used to use multiple electron boxes and have a sequencer inside my modular. I was using the Metron sequencer. And when you do something like that, everything stays in sync and you can still do it, but you're constantly going between sequencers to do different things and figure out where you are and whatever. Having one sequencer that controls the entire rig is really nice because then you can just go, okay, you can see things next to each other. You know, you can see, for example, I know if I'm on track one and I have a kick that looks like this and I want to put a hat, or if I want to put percussion from the Archer's rig and have it not hit at the same time, I can go in between these notes and I can see how they're going to relate to one another before I even fade that in. So it gives you a lot of control over what you're doing because you can really see everything visually. So I really like that. That's one of my favorite things about having one main central sequencer. What else? I think that nails it. I have the Oxy one. Sorry for so many questions. No, that's what this is for. This is a Q&A. This is an Ask Me Anything. So I'm happy to answer the questions. Don't worry. Trying to find a balance between improv and structure. I totally get it. And my whole rig, you know, this is what the basis of my whole live performance course is it's basically how to create a live rig that lends itself to improvisation. So the structure is your selection of what you use and how you're using it and why, how it's set up. And that gives you enough structure that you can then have the freedom to improvise within those guardrails. But you need to have the guardrails of certain things, like having things be able to stay in key, or having sequencers next to each other that you can see, or whatever it ends up being. Having those things be coherent is really important to keep it from sounding too random. Because improvise doesn't mean random. It doesn't mean chaotic. It doesn't mean all over the place. It just means that you're writing music in the moment. And so you still have a certain, you've still set a structure. And I equate the structure of my gear as like the strings on a guitar. They're tuned before you start to play. And if you tried to play a song, or even harder, if you tried to improvise in a certain key and your strings are out of tune, you couldn't do it. It would be really difficult. You'd have to be amazing to be able to even fumble through it. But if your guitar's in tune, it's a lot easier to then improvise within that structure. And I think it's the same with this. Once you have a setup of gear that makes sense together, that works well together, and that is gear that is specifically lends itself to improvisation, then those become your guardrails, and then you can just feel completely free to improvise within that. So it's makes it a lot of fun. Let's see. Trying to find it as Circo on the user search. So I'll get on after the live stream. I'll go on and make sure that they're not private, because I had a couple that I had some modules in that I couldn't put out there yet, so I had them as private. So I'll go in and make sure they're there. But yeah, if you go in Modular Grid, you should be able to find it under Circo. Should not be a problem. Let's see, what else? Any other questions anyone has? Remember, this is Ask Me Anything time, so feel free to put it all out there. And while you come up with some questions and put them in the chat, I will do a little commercial plug, which, sponsored by myself, because I don't do sponsored videos. I do online courses, as I've mentioned. I now have 4 courses available on my website. So if you go to circlelive.com/courses, or there's a link in the description of the video, you can go right to that. There's 2 courses which are full workshops. One is for performance and one is for hybrid production using live gear and a DAW. Both of those full courses are a month long. They include over 50 videos each that are unique to the courses. They're not videos I put out anywhere else. There's 8 specific sections to each course. And then within those 8 sections, we do 8 group calls, so 2 per week for a month, where we get on a Zoom call together. We do Q&A over all of the things that were in that section. You can ask whatever you want. We can go over your stuff. Each week you can send me examples of your work and I give you feedback by email. So if it's the performance one, it's videos of your live performance. If it's production, it's whatever productions you're working on. And then I give you feedback on those every single week throughout the course. There's a one-on-one session that comes with this. So we do a 1-hour one-on-one, whenever you decide to schedule it. We do that via Zoom as well. So we can go over your gear, my gear, whatever you want to do. It's totally up to you. And then there's an online community of people who have all taken the course, which is kind of cool because it's not like a toxic Discord where everybody's in there shitting on each other because you picked the wrong gear and how dare you use that, whatever. It's all people who have invested in improving their skills in either performance or production. So they care about what they're doing. They're not in there just to rip on people. So it's really nice because that group is growing each time there's a new cohort of the classes, and everybody you can network, you can meet people that are in your area, you can put on together shows, you can exchange gear, you can exchange videos of your performance and share what you're doing and all kinds of stuff. It's really, really cool. And if you go online and sign up for either of the full courses, there's a new cohort of those that just went live, of both of those, and the first one of the calls is tomorrow. So if you get signed up today, you can still join in for the cohort for January and you haven't missed any of the calls. So you get immediate access to the videos, and then you can go in and jump right in on the calls. And if for some reason you miss the call, or if you're not able to make it work with your time because of the time zone, all the calls are recorded and you can just go back and see them afterwards. So you can see what people have asked and get the answers to their questions as well. The other 2 courses are new. Well, one of them is new, one of them has been around for a little while. And what they are is the same 2 courses, but in a video only version. So it doesn't include any of the group sessions or the online community or the one-on-one lesson or the feedback on your stuff, but each one of them includes all 50 of the videos, and they're self-paced. You can watch them whenever you want, learn whatever you like. And there's, I don't know, I think it's 7 or 8 hours total of video for each one of the courses. So there's a lot of videos. So yeah, it's there's a ton out there. So I'd love if you guys would sign up. It's that's my only kind of sponsorship message that I can do is, it's the only way that I kind of support what I do here, because obviously YouTube doesn't pay anything. So without doing sponsored videos, which I don't do on purpose, it's the way that I can kind of keep going and keep making these videos and doing all that stuff. So if you'd like to do the course, there's a couple people in here who have done it. I see Chris is in here, James, a couple of other people that are on the chat right now have taken the course. So I'm sure they'll answer any questions that you have. But yeah, so if you're interested in doing that, get signed up now. There's a discount right now because it's the new year. So if you use discount 2025, if you use that code when you check out, you get 25% off. So you get 25% off any of the courses, even the less expensive video course. So go ahead and sign up. I would love to see you there. We have people from all over the world. It's a lot of fun. It's great to get to know people. I've gotten to know some amazing people through the courses. And so I hope to get some of you in there as well. So definitely check those out. Let's see, last few questions here. Have you ever thought about putting everything through the Model 1 mixer? So you have some sort of mixer there, or is a DJ mixer limiting with 6 channels max? The biggest limiting factor of a DJ mixer is the size and the weight, because I travel to perform. I mean, probably 9 shows out of 10 I have to get on a plane for. And all of this gear that you see here in my live setup, this all fits into carry-on luggage. So I don't ever have to worry about checking a bag and having the bag not make it or something get broken or whatever. So my limitation for myself is that everything in my live setup has to fit into carry-on luggage, or else I can't use it. So yes, my main performance mixer is the BoardBrain Exelon, which is right here. It is a fantastic, completely analog mixer that has a ton of other modules that you can connect to the back with these ribbon cables. So you can make it into this whole kind of mixer ecosystem, and you can build your own custom mixer however you like it. So I really love this mixer. I've been using it now for a few months, and it's amazing. So yeah, there's no reason for me to bring a DJ mixer or use a DJ mixer, because there's nothing that I would get from that I really need in my live setup. I mean, the only thing a DJ mixer has that I don't have right now is EQ per channel. But like I said, I don't really EQ per channel or need to, because I do that in the kind of sound design phase rather than kind of chucking a bunch of sounds out there and then having to fix them using an EQ afterwards. So yeah, it would be nice, but it's just not a priority. So it's not worth hauling around a 30-pound DJ mixer to all the shows that I play. So I like to be self-sufficient, so I can just bring my whole gear, roll up, set everything up, connect to the main house mixer, and kind of go with my show. So yeah. I have a lot of friends though that use the Zone 96 when they play, because they're pretty common, so they can ask for them to be in the venue when they perform. But the challenge with that is still, what do you put through the 4 channels? Or 6 channels if you use the auxiliaries. So what do you put through those channels? Like right here, I have 50 plus individual voices in this live rig, between the 32 tracks on these 2 devices and then all my modular. So I don't know what I would put through the 4 channels. I would have to put it into stems anyway. Then you lose control over what you're doing. So it doesn't really help to have EQ over, 18 different sounds going through that, because you're not really going to get the amount of EQ that you're looking for. So yeah, for me, I don't see the advantage of it. For me personally, certainly not the size. So yeah, so I don't. I have thought about it, but I haven't used one. Let's see. Hardware performance course is awesome. Sweet. Thanks, James. James was one of my earliest students. And Christopher, FX Music, also one of my earlier students. So thank you guys for the kind words. Let's see. Oh, eTurner88. That's my, I guess, user on there. I thought you could search Circo. Maybe not. Anyway. So yeah, go ahead and find it on there. The whole set fits into 2 carry-ons. It actually fits into 1 carry-on. backpack. Yeah. So So when I travel to play live, so normally what I was playing with, or what I was traveling with live, was not a 104. It was an 84. So it's like this size, and I had slightly less capabilities with that. With an 84. A 6U84 fits in one side of a rolling carry-on bag, like a standard size carry-on bag. Then the other side, I would put clothes and stuff like that. And then in my backpack, I would put the Electron boxes. And they all fit into my personal item backpack. And then I would take it like that. I am actually just about to change to a different case. I'm going to be trying out a Morph Modular case, which is going to be a 12U84, so it'll still only be 84 width, so about this wide, but it's going to be two boats that are hinged together, and that will become my carry-on. So I'll carry on just the modular as one thing, and then I'll still have the Electron boxes in my backpack. And that's one reason why, if I can get rid of the Digitact, it's just that much better, because then I have a little bit more space in my backpack to put other stuff. But yeah, so yes. That's the plan. But yes, it all does fit in carry-on, believe it or not. I actually did a video. If you look on my YouTube channel, there's I think it was a live stream, but it was right before Super Booth. So like the second week of May, I did one about packing for Super Booth, and I went basically start to finish through taking apart my live rig and packing everything into my carry-ons so that everybody could see exactly how I did it, because I was getting so many questions about it. So you can go check that out if you would like. Let's see here. What else? Whole set fits into carry-on means the modular is closed and the electrons and black box cables, something like a backpack. Yes, more or less. Do you have the Electron boxes in 1010 going into the Exelon or vice versa? So yeah, everything goes into the Exelon. So what happens is, right now I have another little mixer here, which is the Bufaco Stemix, the stereo 3 or 4 input stereo mixer. So one of those channels is the Digitone, one is the Digitact, one is the black box, and then the other one is actually my modular, my studio modular right now, because I was messing around with some stuff with that, but that's usually an empty track. So it goes into that, and then those go into one of the stereo returns in the Exelon, because the Coslin, even though it's on a send, is not coming into a return, it's coming back into its own track. So all of these devices come into one return, and then the Ghost is the other return that's right here. And the only reason I did that is so that everything can then go through the Meta, because otherwise there's a second input into the monitor, the board brain monitor, which is the output module for this. So I could run them into that if I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure that I could get them through the Meta. So I put them all through the Exelon. So everything goes through the Exelon and then out through the monitor. Let's see. Yeah, the Exelon solution is awesome. It is, for me, it is the best live performance mixer solution that there is out there right now, because it's really flexible, because it's expandable. So you can link two of them together. You can add, they've got another 3 channel version that you can add to it, and they all share the same sends. You've got all these different output modules, like the IO that I'm using here. There's a TRS one that has full-size 1/4-inch outputs of either pre-fader or post-fader from the mixer. There's an optics module that has output to actually input and output via ADAT. So you can connect it to your computer or your sound card or whatever, if you've got ADAT inputs and outputs. So you can, let's say you had Ableton with CV tools, you could be running sequences in through the optics and then using that to go out and sequence here. The voices then go into the Exelon, and then they go back out the optics via ADAT to be mixed in or processed in your computer. So it's like all kinds of things you can do with the different modules, kind of depending on the way that you want to configure it. So there's a lot of options, a lot of flexibility, which I really love. The other thing that's really cool about it is that it's completely analog and it is completely stereo. So every channel is stereo. Whereas like in some mixers, like prior to this, I had the WMD performance mixer, and that has 8 channels. 6 of them are mono and 2 are stereo. With this one, it has 6 channels and they're all stereo. And both of the sends and returns are stereo as well. So if stereo is important to you, it's not really that important to me, but if it's important to you, it's cool. Another cool thing this does too is, so if you're only using mono voices like I am, you can input 2 mono voices into the left and right stereo. And then let's say on this track, you had 2 mono voices, you can just click this and the balance, so the panning, since it's not stereo, you don't necessarily need panning. So if you do it this way and you have 2 voices there, the panning knob becomes a crossfader between those 2 sounds. So if you have it dead in the center, both of them are sharing this channel, sharing the volume fader and the effect sends, but you can also fade one completely out and use this, or fade the other one completely out and use this. And that's just like with a push of a button, you have that capability, which is pretty cool as well. And I also love that it has mutes, push button mutes, so you can mute things here. I tend to mute a lot in the Oxy, but it's really handy to have these mutes on here as well, which is cool. It also has, I mentioned that there's 2 inputs into the monitor, and this has 2 complete outputs. So there's an A out and a B out. And if you see here, each channel has a switch, so they can be A, B, or A and B. And so you can decide which they go out on. And what's cool with that is it means that you can have parallel processing if you want. So if you send it out A, B, like if everything is going out to the A and B channel, you can have the A go out dry, and then you can have the B go on a send through a processing chain if you want, and then you can mix those 2 together, which is pretty sweet. You mix those together using the monitor module. So lots that it can do, but it's a very, very cool thing. Let's see, what else? Have you tested the Torso T1 for performance, and what are your thoughts about it? Funny you say that. I actually have a Torso T1 on the way. The Torso guys, I met them at ADE this year, and they're sending me one to try. Because they're convinced that I'm going to love it, which I have played around with it. I played around with it at Superbooth and at NobCon, and it's fun. It really is. It's, for me, it's really limiting compared to the Oxy. I mean, the Oxy does really everything the Torso can do, and, you know, times 50. So I already have pretty much all those capabilities here. The one thing I'm looking forward to with trying the Torso is, from what I've heard from a bunch of my friends that use it, they really like the interface and just the way it works, not necessarily what it does. So like the Oxy does a lot more, but they like the way the Torso does what it does, rather than necessarily being like, oh, it does this thing that nothing else does. So it's pretty cool. Check out that packing video. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You'd think it would be boring, but it's pretty funny. Check out that setup as I'm starting to move from hardware boxes to modular. Checking with synth voices already got Atlantics, might keep drumming the boxes. Yeah, there's all kinds of choices to make. All right, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's been a long one. We almost went 4 hours. Holy crap, this has been a really long one. But thank you guys, I appreciate it. Appreciate you spending the time and hanging out. Jump into the course if you're interested. I'd love to see you in there. If you know anybody who would be interested, please tell them, because obviously every little bit helps. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one of these live streams. Maybe I'll do another one next weekend, or who knows. But yeah, check out some of the other videos and some of the other streams if you want to see a full live performance. The most recent one I did was on New Year's Eve. So if you go on my channel in the live section, you'll see there's a whole New Year's Eve one, which is a 3-hour long, completely improvised live set. No talking, just the whole time, just performing. So go check that out and enjoy. But thank you guys very much. Hope to see you again soon in the next video.